Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto was the only man on an island of Amazons and fell in love with Boa Hancock? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Stranger from the Sea. The clash of kunai against metallic claws echoed through the forest outside Konoha. Naruto Uzumaki leapt backward, his orange and black jacket torn at the shoulder, blood seeping through from a fresh wound. Across from him, a figure shrouded in shifting shadows circled with unnatural movements, its form twisting as though parts of it existed in different dimensions. "You're not getting away this time," Naruto called, his blue eyes narrowing with determination. "Whatever you are." The creature, the villagers had taken to calling it the Dimensional Ripper, had been terrorizing the outskirts of the Hidden Leaf for weeks. It appeared without warning, tore reality apart wherever it went, and vanished before the strongest ninja could corner it. But not today. Today, Naruto had finally managed to track it to this remote clearing. The creature's voice came as a dissonant whisper that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. "Jinchuriki, your power, perfect catalyst." Naruto's hands moved quickly, forming familiar seals. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. In an instant, dozens of identical orange-clad ninjas surrounded the creature, each with the same determined expression as the original. The clones attacked in waves, forcing the creature to defend from all sides. It moved with impossible agility, its limbs occasionally passing through solid matter as if it weren't entirely present in their reality. 3 clones disappeared in puffs of smoke as the creature's claws ripped through them. "We need to pin it down," Naruto muttered to himself, assessing the situation. He felt the familiar surge of chakra as he began forming a Rasengan in his palm, the swirling blue energy growing in intensity. The creature suddenly froze, its head tilting as though listening to something only it could hear. Then it laughed, a hollow, echoing sound that made the hairs on the back of Naruto's neck stand on end. "The convergence approaches," it hissed. "The nexus calls for power." The air around it began to distort, reality itself seeming to bend inward. "Now!" Naruto shouted. His remaining clones rushed forward, grabbing onto the creature's limbs while the real Naruto charged, Rasengan blazing in his hand. Just as he was about to make contact, the creature's body erupted with dark energy. The space between them fractured like broken glass, revealing a swirling vortex of colors never meant for human eyes. "Perfect," the creature whispered. "A sacrifice to open the way." Naruto felt his body being pulled forward. His feet left the ground as an inexorable force dragged him toward the dimensional tier. He struggled against it, attempting to form another jutsu, but the chaotic energies disrupted his chakra flow. "Naruto," a familiar voice called from the treeline. Sasuke Uchiha emerged, his Sharingan activated, Kakashi close behind him. "Stay back," Naruto shouted, still fighting against the pull. "It's trying to." His words cut off as the vortex suddenly expanded, engulfing him completely. The last thing he saw was Sasuke lunging forward, hand outstretched, before a kaleidoscope of realities crashed over him like a tidal wave. Pain, confusion, the sensation of being simultaneously compressed to a single point and stretched across infinity. Naruto's consciousness flickered as fundamental forces tore at his very being. He caught glimpses of other worlds, cities unlike any he'd ever seen. Strange creatures, landscapes impossible in his reality. Then darkness. The rhythmic sound of waves lapping against shore gradually filtered into Naruto's awareness. Salt air filled his lungs as he drew a ragged breath, followed by a fit of coughing that racked his body. Every muscle ached as though he'd been put through one of Gai-sensei's most extreme training regimens. Something cool and wet touched his forehead. A cloth. He struggled to open his eyes, the brightness of daylight sending sharp pain through his skull. "He's waking up," a female voice said, sounding both surprised and alarmed. "Keep your weapons ready," another woman responded. "We don't know what he is." Naruto forced his eyes open, blinking against the harsh sunlight. His vision focused on the faces hovering above him, women with stern expressions, adorned in colorful, exotic clothing unlike anything he'd seen in the 5 nations. They held spears and bows aimed directly at him, their stances suggesting they knew how to use them. "Where?" His voice came out as a dry rasp. Where am I? The women exchanged glances. One of them, tall with short brown hair and a serpentine tattoo winding up her arm, leaned closer. He speaks our language, she said, her tone suspicious. Are you a spy from the outside world? Naruto tried to sit up, only to discover his arms and legs were bound by thick ropes. I'm not a spy. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village. I was fighting a creature that could tear through dimensions and, he stopped, noting their increasingly skeptical expressions. Look, I just need to know where I am so I can figure out how to get home. Silence, commanded the tattooed woman. Men are forbidden on Amazon Lily. Your precinct. Here is a violation of our most sacred law. Amazon. What? Naruto's confusion was genuine. I've never heard of. Enough. A new voice cut through the conversation, commanding immediate respect. The warriors straightened and stepped aside, creating a path for the approaching figure. Naruto's eyes widened as he took in the woman who now stood before him. She was tall and slender, with impossibly long black hair that flowed down her back. Her attire was rich red and gold, revealing and regal at once. But it was her face that held Naruto transfixed, perfect features arranged in an expression of cold disdain. Yet possessing a beauty so striking it seemed almost supernatural. So this is the man found on our shore, she said, her voice smooth as silk yet sharp as a blade. She looked down at Naruto, tilting her head slightly. How disappointing. I expected something more impressive. Despite his predicament, Naruto felt a flicker of indignation. Hey, I'm plenty impressive. If I wasn't tied up, I'd show you. The woman's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flashed in her eyes. She raised a slender finger, pointing it directly at Naruto's face. Do you know who I am, outsider? No idea, Naruto replied honestly. A murmur of disbelief ran through the gathered warriors. The woman's perfect lips curved into a cold smile. I am Boa Hancock, Empress of Amazon Lily and Captain of the Kuja Pirates. Snake Princess of the Calm Belt and one of the 7 warlords of the sea. She leaned down, her face inches from his. And you are trespassing in my kingdom. Naruto met her gaze steadily. Like I was trying to say, I didn't exactly plan this trip. I was fighting a dimensional creature, got sucked into some kind of vortex, and woke up here. Once I figure out where, here, is relative to my home. I'll be on my way. Hancock straightened, studying him with narrowed eyes. After a moment, she turned to the tattooed warrior. Ran, where exactly was he found? On the eastern shore, near the Calm Belt boundary, Snake Princess. There was evidence of strange weather, a whirlpool that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. The sentries reported lights in He sky before finding him unconscious on the beach. Hancock's expression betrayed nothing, but she seemed to be considering this information carefully. And his possessions. Another warrior stepped forward, carrying a waterlogged pouch. Just these, princess. Strange weapons, scrolls with unintelligible writing, and this headband with an unknown symbol. Naruto strained against his bonds. Hey, careful with those. That's my ninja gear. Ninja. Hancock repeated the word with mild interest. I've heard tales of such warriors from distant lands. She took the headband, examining the leaf village symbol. This means nothing to me. It's the symbol of Konohagakure, the village hidden in the leaves, Naruto explained. One of the 5 great shinobi nations. No such nation exists in the Grand Line or the 4 Blues. Hancock stated dismissively. You speak in riddles or lies. Before Naruto could respond, a commotion erupted from the edge of the gathered crowd. 2 women, bearing a striking resemblance to Hancock though distinctly shorter and with different builds, pushed their way forward. Sister, called the one with blue-tinged hair. The elders are demanding an explanation for the man's presence on our island. Marigold, Sandersonia, Hancock acknowledged them with a slight nod. Tell the elders I am interrogating the intruder personally. The green-haired sister, Sandersonia, eyed Naruto with undisguised curiosity. Is he dangerous? Hancock's eyes returned to Naruto, assessing. That remains to be seen. Naruto had finally had enough. Look, I don't want to be rude to you or your sisters. But I need to get back to my village. People are counting on me, and that dimensional monster is still out there somewhere. Your concerns are not mine, Hancock replied coldly. The law of Amazon Lily is absolute. No man may set foot on this island and live. A ripple of unease passed through Naruto. He'd been in plenty of tight spots before, but something told him these men were entirely serious about their laws. Maybe we can work something out, he suggested, trying to keep his voice reasonable. I just need to. A sudden tremor shook the ground, cutting him off mid-sentence. The warriors looked around in alarm as the vibration intensified. The sky darkened unnaturally, clouds swirling into a vortex directly overhead. What's happening? One of the warriors cried out. It's just like when he appeared. Hancock's eyes darted to the sky, then back to Naruto. What have you brought to our shores? This isn't me, Naruto insisted, straining against his bonds. But it feels like the same energy that brought me here. You need to untie me, I can help. Hancock hesitated, her imperious facade cracking slightly as the unnatural storm intensified. Before she could decide, a massive form broke the surface of the nearby ocean, sending a wave crashing over the beach. A collective gasp rose from the warriors as they beheld the creature emerging from the sea, a serpentine beast with scales gleaming like black metal, eyes glowing with the same otherworldly energy that churned in the sky above. It rose higher and higher, dwarfing the tallest trees along the shoreline. Sea King, someone shouted, but like none we've ever seen. Hancock's demeanor transformed instantly. Gone was the cold disdain, replaced by the focused intensity of a warrior. Kuja, 2 arms. The women responded immediately, forming battle lines with practiced efficiency. Arrows flew toward the massive creature, most bouncing harmlessly off its scales. The few that penetrated seemed to cause it minimal discomfort. Naruto watched as Hancock stepped forward, her stance confident despite facing a monster that towered over the entire beach. The air around her seemed to shimmer with power. Princess, be careful, Marigold called. Its eyes. That's not a natural sea king. The creature lunged downward with frightening speed, jaws wide enough to swallow dozens of people at once. The warriors scattered, many firing arrows at its exposed mouth as they moved. Hancock didn't flinch. As the massive head descended toward her, she leapt impossibly high, her body arcing gracefully through the air. Her leg extended in a powerful kick that connected with the monster's snout, the impact creating a visible shockwave. The Sea King recoiled, hissing in pain or surprise. Naruto couldn't tell which. What he could tell was that this woman was far more powerful than her elegant appearance suggested. She landed lightly on the sand, already preparing for the creature's next attack. It came instantly, the beast's tail whipping toward Hancock with devastating force. She evaded with inhuman agility, but the attack continued its arc toward the gathered warriors behind her. Look out, Naruto shouted, redoubling his efforts to break free of his bonds. The ropes strained but held firm. Hancock's sisters leapt into action, their bodies transforming before Naruto's eyes. Where 2 women had stood, there were now snake-human hybrids. Their lower bodies coiled powerfully as they intercepted the creature's tail. Even with their considerable strength, they were pushed backward, leaving deep furrows in the sand. The Sea King roared, a sound that seemed to tear at reality itself. The air around it distorted in a manner painfully familiar to Naruto, the same effect he'd witnessed during his battle with the Dimensional Ripper. It's connected, he called out. This thing is from the same place as the creature that attacked me. Hancock glanced back at him, her expression unreadable, before returning her attention to the threat. She placed her hands together in a heart shape, her fingers forming a frame through which she targeted the monster. Mero Mero Mellow, she called, and a strange pink energy shot forth from her hands, taking the form of a heart that expanded as it flew toward the Sea King. The energy washed over the creature, which froze momentarily. Naruto expected it to turn to stone based on the confident smile that had appeared on Hancock's face. Instead, the creature shuddered and roared again, this time with greater fury. Impossible. Hancock's composure slipped for the first time. Nothing resists my devil fruit power. The Sea King's body began to glow with the same chaotic energy that had filled the dimensional rift. Multiple smaller tentacles erupted from its body, lashing out in all directions. Warriors were thrown through the air as the beach became a chaos of sand, water, and screams. Naruto knew he had to act now. Focusing his chakra, he attempted to create shadow clones despite his bonds. The familiar energy surged within him, but something was wrong. The chakra flow felt distorted, as though passing through a warped lens. "Come on," he muttered, concentrating harder. A single clone materialized beside him, looking equally confused by the strange chakra behavior. "Free me," Naruto commanded. The clone nodded, quickly untying the ropes around Naruto's wrists and ankles. As soon as he was free, Naruto leapt to his feet, assessing the battlefield. Hancock and her sisters were engaged in direct combat with the main body of the Sea King, while other warriors fought desperately against the lashing tentacles. Despite their impressive strength and skill, they were clearly outmatched by the creature's dimensional abilities. Naruto's hands formed familiar seals. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 20 clones appeared around him, fewer than he'd intended, but enough for his purpose. They immediately charged into the fray, each drawing a kunai fr. The pouch one of the clones had retrieved. Hancock's eyes widened slightly as she registered the sudden multiplication of the man she'd had bound only moments before. Her momentary distraction nearly cost her as a tentacle whipped toward her head. Naruto was there in an instant, a kunai slicing through the appendage before it could strike her. "I'll explain later," he said, meeting her surprised gaze. "Right now, we need to take this thing down together." For a brief moment, something like respect flickered in Hancock's eyes. She gave a curt nod. "The head is the weakest point. But its scales repel our attacks. I've got something for that." Naruto held out his hand, focusing his chakra. The familiar spiraling energy of the Rasengan began to form in his palm, but once again, it behaved strangely. Fluctuating and changing color as it spun. "What the? Your power," Hancock observed, deflecting another attack with a kick. "It's being affected by the creature's presence." Naruto grimaced, maintaining the unstable Rasengan through sheer will. "Then we'll have to improvise. Can you and your sisters create an opening? I just need one clear shot at its head." Hancock's expression hardened with determination. She called out to Marigold and Sandersonia in a language Naruto didn't understand. They responded immediately, moving in perfect coordination as they engaged the creature from different angles. "Whatever you're planning," Hancock said, "be ready." With that, she launched herself directly at the Sea King, her movements a blur of lethal grace. Her sisters followed, their SNA-K hybrid forms allowing them to constrict parts of the monster's body while Hancock delivered a series of devastating kicks to its face and neck. The creature thrashed wildly, its attention divided among the three powerful women. Naruto saw his opportunity forming as they systematically forced the monster to expose its throat. "Now," Hancock shouted, delivering a kick so powerful it snapped the Sea King's head back. Naruto charged forward, the unstable Rasengan pulsing in his hand. His clones formed a human ladder, launching him high into the air directly toward the creature's exposed throat. As he soared toward his target, he poured more chakra into the Rasengan, pushing through the dimensional distortion. "Rasengan," he shouted, driving the spiraling sphere of energy directly into the soft tissue beneath the monster's jaw. The impact was catastrophic. The unstable chakra, interacting with the creature's dimensional energy, created a reaction far beyond what Naruto had anticipated. A blinding flash enveloped the area as the Rasengan exploded with amplified force, sending Naruto hurtling backward. Strong arms caught him before he could crash into the ground. He looked up to see Hancock. Her expression a mix of surprise and something unreadable. She set him down quickly, returning her attention to the Sea King. The creature was writhing in agony, its body beginning to dissolve from the point of impact. The dimensional energy that had empowered it now seemed to be tearing it apart from within. With a final, reality-shaking roar, the monster collapsed back into the sea, its form disintegrating into particles of light that scattered and faded. An eerie silence fell over the beach. The unnatural storm dissipated, leaving behind a clear blue sky as if nothing had happened. The only evidence of the battle was the destruction along the shoreline and the exhausted warriors catching their breath. Hancock turned to Naruto, her imperious demeanor returning now that the immediate threat had passed. "It seems you're not entirely useless after all." Naruto couldn't help but grin. "Thanks. You're pretty impressive yourself." A subtle flush colored Hancock's cheeks before she looked away sharply. "Don't misunderstand. You're still an intruder on our island." "But he helped us, sister," Sandersonia said, returning to her human form alongside Marigold. His strange powers were effective against the creature. Marigold nodded in agreement, and the beast appeared after his arrival. They may be connected. Hancock considered this, her gaze returning to Naruto with renewed intensity. What exactly are you? Those powers are unlike any devil fruit I've encountered. I told you, I'm a ninja from the Hidden Leaf Village, Naruto explained. What I used was chakra, not whatever this devil fruit thing is. Where I come from, most people can be trained to use chakra for various techniques. Fascinating, Sandersonia murmured. A world of warriors. Hancock silenced her with a look before addressing Naruto again. You claim to have been fighting a creature that manipulates dimensions. Now a Sea King appears with similar abilities immediately after your arrival. Her eyes narrowed. This cannot be coincidence. I don't think it is, Naruto agreed. The thing I was fighting, we called it the Dimensional Ripper, was talking about some kind of convergence, right before it opened the portal that sent me here. I think whatever it was trying to do is affecting multiple worlds, including yours. The three sisters exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Hancock spoke. The laws of Amazon Lily are clear. No man may set foot on this island. She paused, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. However, given the unusual circumstances and your assistance with the Sea King, the law may be temporarily suspended while we investigate this threat. Naruto let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. So you're not going to execute me? Not immediately, Hancock replied, the ghost of a smile playing at her lips. Consider yourself a prisoner under investigation rather than an intruder sentenced to death. That's progress, I guess. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. So what now? Now, Hancock said, turning toward a path leading away from the beach, you will be brought before the Council of Elders, who will determine your temporary status while on our island. Your weapons and possessions will remain confiscated until we better understand your nature and intentions. She gestured to several warriors, who moved to escort Naruto. This time, however, they did not bind him, though they kept their weapons ready. One more thing, Hancock added, looking back at him over her shoulder. Her expression had returned to its cold, regal mask. Try to escape, and my earlier leniency will be forgotten. Is that understood? Naruto nodded. Crystal clear. But just so you know, I'm not planning to escape. If these dimensional disturbances are happening here too, then I need to figure out what's going on and how to stop it, for both our worlds. Something in his tone must have conveyed his sincerity, because Hancock studied him for a moment longer than necessary before turning away with a slight nod. As they began the journey inland, Naruto took the opportunity to observe his surroundings more carefully. The island was lush and vibrant, with vegetation unlike anything in the Land of Fire. Strange birds called from trees bearing unfamiliar fruits. The air itself felt different, heavier with moisture and carrying scents he couldn't identify. The Kuja warriors walked with confidence through this environment, clearly at home in the dense forest. They spoke occasionally among themselves in hushed tones, casting curious glances at Naruto when they thought he wasn't looking. So, Naruto ventured, addressing the tattooed warrior, Ran, he remembered. What exactly is Amazon Lily? And what's a devil fruit? Ran looked surprised by the direct question but answered after a moment's hesitation. Amazon Lily is our island kingdom in the Calm Belt, ruled by the Snake Princess Boa Hancock. We are the Kuj, a tribe, women warriors and pirates who venture into the Grand Line for treasures and resources. And men aren't allowed here at all? Naruto asked. Never, Ran confirmed firmly. It has been our way for countless generations. The outside world and its men bring only suffering and corruption. Naruto frowned. That seems like a pretty broad generalization. Ran's expression darkened. You know nothing of our history, outsider. Sensing he'd touched on a sensitive subject, Naruto changed tack. And these devil fruits, Hancock mentioned them when she was talking about my chakra. This topic seemed safer, as Ran's expression relaxed slightly. Devil fruits grant incredible powers to those who eat them, at the cost of never being able to swim again. The Snake Princess and her sisters ate the snake fruits, allowing them to transform into serpent forms and use special abilities. So that's how they transformed during the battle, Naruto mused. And Hancock's heart attack thing. The Mero fruit's power. Another warrior explained. The love fruit allows our princess to turn any who feel desire for her into stone with a single glance. Naruto's eyes widened. Seriously, that's pretty intense. It has never failed before today, Ran noted. The creature's dimensional nature must have protected it somehow. Their conversation was interrupted as they emerged from the forest into a large clearing. Naruto stopped in his tracks, momentarily stunned by the sight before him. A city of stone and wood rose from the jungle, its architecture unlike anything in the Five Nations. Buildings with serpentine motifs climbed the terraced slopes of a mountain, culminating in a grand palace at its peak. Women of all ages moved through the streets, engaged in various activities, training, crafting, trading. They all paused at the sight of the procession, especially when they noticed Naruto among them. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Children pointed openly, while adult women stared with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. A man, on Amazon Lily, the snake princess has brought him. The murmurs grew louder as they proceeded through the city streets. Naruto tried to maintain his dignity despite feeling like an exotic animal on display. Hancock walked ahead, her regal bearing silencing the most vocal comments with a mere glance. They ascended a long stairway carved into the mountainside, eventually reaching a massive stone building near the palace. Intricate serpent carvings adorned its columns, and imposing doors stood open, revealing a dimly lit chamber within. The Hall of Judgment, Ran explained quietly. The elders await. Hancock paused at the entrance, turning to address Naruto directly. You will speak only when addressed. You will show proper respect to the elders. And you will tell the complete truth, or I will personally ensure you regret it. Despite the threat, there was something almost protective in her tone. As though she were giving him advice rather than a warning. Naruto nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation. I understand. Hancock held his gaze for a moment longer before turning and entering the hall. Naruto followed, the warriors forming a loose escort around him. The interior was vast and circular, with tiered seating surrounding a central stone platform. Elderly women occupied the highest tier, their faces lined with age but their eyes sharp with wisdom and authority. The lower tiers quickly filled with Kuja warriors and citizens, all eager to witness the unprecedented event. Hancock took her place on a throne-like seat to the side of the central platform, her sisters standing beside her. Naruto was directed to stand in the center, illuminated by shafts of light from high windows. The eldest of the council, a woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, spoke first. Boa Hancock, explain why you have brought a man before the council instead of executing him according to our laws. Hancock rose gracefully. Honored Elder Nyan, this man appeared on our shores under unusual circumstances. Shortly after his arrival, a sea king with dimensional abilities attacked our warriors. The man assisted in defeating the creature, using powers unknown to our tribe. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Furthermore, Hancock continued, he claims to be from another world entirely. One that may be connected to the strange phenomena we've observed in recent days. Elder Nyan's gaze shifted to Naruto, her expression inscrutable. Step forward, man, and identify yourself. Naruto moved to the center of the platform, standing tall despite the hundreds of eyes fixed upon him. I am Naruto Uzumaki, ninja of Konohagakure, the village hidden in the leaves. I was GHT here accidentally while battling a creature that could manipulate dimensions. And what proof do you offer of this fantastic claim? Another elder demanded. The proof was in the Sea King's attack. Hancock interjected before Naruto could respond. It exhibited the same dimensional properties he described. And his powers. She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable supporting a man's case. His powers are unlike any devil fruit ability we have encountered. Show us, Elder Nyan commanded, addressing Naruto directly. Naruto looked to Hancock, who gave a slight nod of permission. He formed a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 5 perfect copies of himself appeared in a circle around him, each giving a small wave to the assembled Amazons. Gasps and exclamations filled the hall. Not even the copy fruit creates independent entities. One of the elders exclaimed. Naruto dispelled the clones, which vanished in small puffs of smoke. Where I come from, this is just one of many techniques ninjas can learn. We use chakra. a combination of physical and spiritual energy, to perform these jutsu. Elder Nyan leaned forward, her interest clearly piqued. And this dimensional creature you fought, what was its purpose? I'm not entirely sure, Naruto admitted. It appeared in our village a few weeks ago and began causing distortions in reality. Right before I was pulled through the portal, it mentioned something about a convergence and a nexus. It seemed to be trying to connect different worlds for some reason. This aligns with the ancient texts, a previously silent elder commented. Her voice barely above a whisper. The hall grew quiet as she continued. The legend of the Nexus speaks of a time when the barriers between worlds would thin, allowing passage between realms usually separated by the Great Void. Naruto's eyes widened. You have legends about this. Many cultures do, the elder replied, though they are often dismissed as mere myth. The texts speak of a convergence that occurs once every 1,000 years, when the dimensional barriers are at their weakest. Hancock rose from her throne, her expression troubled. Elder Saria, you believe these events are connected to the ancient prophecy? I cannot say for certain, the elder answered cautiously. But the timing and circumstances are suggestive. Elder Nyan raised a hand to silence the murmurs that had broken out again. If these events are indeed connected to the legend of the Nexus, then we face a threat greater than a single man on our shores. She fixed Naruto with a penetrating stare. Naruto Uzumaki, what are your intentions while on Amazon Lily? Naruto met her gaze without hesitation. I need to find a way back to my world to warn them about what's happening. But I also want to help stop whatever's causing these dimensional disturbances. If your world and mine are both being affected, then we have a common enemy. His sincerity seemed to register with the elders, who exchanged thoughtful glances. Finally, Elder Nyan spoke again. The law of Amazon Lily has stood for generations. No man may set foot on our island. However, the law also instructs us to protect our people from all threats. She paused, considering her next words carefully. If this dimensional disturbance threatens Amazon Lily, then we must take whatever steps necessary to combat it, even if that means temporarily tolerating a man's presence. Relief washed over Naruto, though he tried not to show it too openly. Under strict conditions, Elder Nyan continued, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. You will remain under guard at all times. You will be confined to designated areas. You will share all knowledge that may help us understand and counter this threat. And you will depart as soon as a solution is found or a way to return you to your world is discovered. Naruto nodded. Those terms are fair. Thank you. Elder Nyan turned to Hancock. Snake Princess, as ruler of Amazon Lily, this man's supervision falls to you. Do you accept this responsibility? A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crossed Hancock's perfect features before her regal mask returned. I accept, Elder Nyan. Then it is settled, the elder declared. Naruto Uzumaki is granted temporary asylum on Amazon Lily while we investigate the dimensional disturbances. She addressed the assembled Kuja. Let it be known that this exception is made solely due to the unusual threat we face. The law against men remains otherwise in full effect. With that pronouncement, the formal council session concluded. The Amazons began filing out of the hall, many still casting curious glances at Naruto as they passed. Hancock approached him, her sisters close behind. You will be given quarters near the palace, where my warriors can keep watch over you. Your possessions will be returned, though you will be expected to explain their purpose and function. Thank you, Naruto said sincerely. I know this can't be easy, bending your laws like this. Do not mistake necessity for kindness, Hancock replied coldly, though something in her eyes belied her tone. You remain an intruder in our sacred home. Before Naruto could respond, a commotion at the entrance to the hall caught everyone's attention. A warrior burst in, her expression urgent. Snake Princess. A ship approaches from the western horizon, a ship unlike any we've seen before. Hancock frowned. Pirates dare approach Amazon Lily directly. Not pirates, Princess, the warrior replied, her voice trembling slightly. The ship bears no Jolly Roger or trading flags. It appears to be made of gold, and it sails against the wind and tide as though they do not exist. A heavy silence fell over the remaining Amazons. Even Hancock seemed momentarily at a loss. A golden ship, Elder Saria whispered. Sailing against the natural order. She turned to Elder Nyan, fear evident in her aged face. The second sign from the prophecy, when vessels of divine metal cross the calm belt, heralding the arrival of those who walk between worlds. Naruto stepped forward. I should go with you to investigate. If this is connected to the dimensional disturbances, agreed, Hancock interrupted. Surprising everyone including herself, she recovered quickly, her authoritative demeanor returning. Your insight may prove valuable, and it's better to keep you where I can see you. With a graceful gesture, she led the way out of the hall. Naruto followed closely, acutely aware of the tension that had settled over the Amazons. Whatever was approaching their island, it had even these fierce warriors on edge. As they emerged onto the mountain path overlooking the western shore, Naruto caught his first glimpse of the approaching vessel. Even from this distance, it was clearly unlike any ship he'd ever seen. Its golden hull gleamed supernaturally bright in the afternoon sun, and it moved through the water with unnatural precision, cutting a straight line toward Amazon Lily despite the visible currents moving in the opposite direction. What is that? He murmured. Trouble, Hancock replied simply. But of what kind remains to be seen? On the opposite side of the island. Far from the commotion surrounding Naruto's arrival and the approaching golden ship, another disturbance rippled through reality. The air shimmered and tore, creating a small, invisible rift through which a presence observed the unfolding events. Diana, Princess of Themyscira, knelt at the edge of a sacred pool within her mother's temple. The water's surface showed not a reflection, but visions of a distant shore, a man with bright yellow hair being led through a city of women warriors, followed by images of a golden ship approaching from the west. The convergence has begun, Queen Hippolyta stated, her voice grave as she stood behind her daughter. Just as the oracle foretold. Diana rose, her expression determined. Then I must cross to their realm before the barriers seal once more. The fate of both our worlds may depend on it. Be cautious, my daughter, Hippolyta warned. The Kuja are proud warriors, but their history with the outside world has left them deeply mistrustful. And the man, she hesitated. What about him? Diana asked. His aura is unlike any mortal I've seen, the queen admitted. There is great power within him, power that could EIT her save our worlds or hasten their destruction. Diana checked the sword at her hip and the lasso coiled at her side. Then I shall discover his true nature and intentions. The ancient passages bet. Our islands have been closed for generations, Hippolyta reminded her. Are you certain you can find the way? Diana's blue eyes gleamed with determination. The barriers are weakening. I can feel it. Where once there was solid separation, now there are cracks through which one might slip, if one knows where to look. She embraced her mother briefly before turning toward the hidden path that led to the eastern shore of Themyscira. As she walked, the reality around her seemed to flicker occasionally, as though two worlds were overlapping. The convergence approaches, she whispered to herself. And with it, either harmony or chaos. Behind her, the temple pool's surface rippled, showing one final image. A shadowy figure watching from between dimensions, its eyes fixed on the man called Naruto Uzumaki. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Divided Paradise. Naruto stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the western shore of Amazon Lily, the wind whipping through his blonde hair as he watched the golden ships approach. Beside him, Boa Hancock maintained her regal posture, though her narrowed eyes betrayed concern. Dozens of Kuja warriors had taken defensive positions along the shoreline, bows drawn and spears ready. Has anything like this happened before? Naruto asked, breaking the tense silence. Hancock's gaze remained fixed on the mysterious vessel. Amazon Lily has remained hidden from the outside world for generations. The Calm Belt's sea kings devour any ship foolish enough to enter these waters, and our location is absent from all known maps. She paused. For a vessel to approach so boldly, it is unprecedented. Sandersonia slithered forward in her half-snake form, her forked tongue flicking nervously. Sister, could it be connected to the dimensional disturbances Elder Saria mentioned? Almost certainly, Hancock replied. The timing is too convenient to be coincidence. The golden ship had drawn close enough now for Naruto to make out more details. It bore no visible crew, no fluttering sails, just an impossibly sleek golden hull that seemed to propel itself through the water. As it neared the shallows, it slowed gracefully before coming to a complete stop approximately 50 meters from shore. For several long moments, nothing happened. The Amazons maintained their positions, the tension growing with each passing second. Maybe it's empty, Marigold suggested, her massive form coiled beside her sister's. As if in response to her words, the ship's side seemed to liquefy, forming a perfect archway that shimmered in the sunlight. A single figure emerged. Dian stepped onto the surface of the water, walking across it as easily as solid ground. Even from a distance, Naruto could tell it was a woman. She moved with fluid grace, each step precise and powerful. As she drew closer to shore, her features became clearer. Tall and athletic with long dark hair that flowed behind her, wearing armor that gleamed like polished bronze and silver. A sword hung at her hip, and what appeared to be a golden rope coiled at her side. The Kuja warriors shifted nervously, their weapons trained on the approaching stranger. She walks on water, one of them whispered. Like a devil fruit user. No, Naruto corrected quietly. That's not a devil fruit technique. Where I come from, walking on water is a basic chakra control exercise. He frowned. But she's not using chakra either. It's something different. Hancock raised a hand, signaling her warriors to hold their fire but remain alert. As the stranger reached the shoreline, she stopped, making no move to step onto the beach proper. Instead, she raised her hands in a universal gesture of peace. Greetings, warriors of Kuja, she called, her voice carrying clearly across the distance. I come in peace and seek audience with your leader. Hancock descended the cliff path with measured steps, her sisters and Naruto following close behind. When she reached the beach, she stood tall, her presence every bit as commanding as the stranger's. I am Boa Hancock, Snake Princess and ruler of Amazon Lily. Identify yourself and your purpose here, intruder. The woman bowed her head respectfully, though her posture remained proud. I am Diana, Princess of Themyscira and daughter of Queen Hippolyta. I have crossed the dimensional barrier because our worlds face a common threat. Murmurs spread through the gathered Kuja. Hancock's expression remained impassive, though Naruto noticed her shoulders tense slightly. Themyscira, she repeated. I know of no such place in the Grand Line or beyond. Because it exists in another dimension. Diana explained. Just as your Amazon Lily exists separate from the world I know. Her gaze shifted to Naruto, studying him with evident curiosity. You have already encountered one traveler between worlds. I see. Naruto felt suddenly self-conscious under her scrutiny. There was something about her presence that radiated both power and wisdom, not unlike the fifth Hokage, though distinctly different. How do you know about me? He asked. Diana smiled slightly. The waters of truth in my mother's temple showed visions of your arrival. The dimensional barriers between our worlds are weakening. What was once solid separation has become permeable. Hancock stepped forward, physically inserting herself between Diana and Naruto. You claim to be royalty from another world, yet provide no proof beyond words. Why should we trust you? A fair question, Diana acknowledged. In my world, I am known as Wonder Woman, an ambassador between the hidden island of Themyscira and the world of men. Like your Kuja, my people are warrior women who have separated themselves from the outside world, though for different reasons. She reached slowly for the golden rope at her side, careful to telegraph her movements to the wary Amazons. This is the lasso of truth, forged by the gods themselves. Anyone bound by it cannot speak falsehood. She held it out. Test it upon me, if you wish. Hancock's eyes narrowed suspiciously. The gods of your world hold no power here. Perhaps not, Diana conceded. But the dimensional convergence affects the fundamental nature of reality itself. What works in one world may now work in others as the barriers continue to thin. Elder Nyan had made her way down to the beach, leaning heavily on a gnarled staff. Let us not be hasty to dismiss her claims. The ancient texts speak of parallel worlds inhabited by those similar to ourselves, sister tribes separated by the Great Void. She turned to Diana. You mentioned a threat. Explain. Diana nodded gratefully. My people's oracle foresaw a convergence of realities, multiple dimensions briefly overlapping before either merging permanently or tearing apart catastrophically. The process has already begun, which is why I was able to cross to your world. Her expression grew grave. But I am not the only one crossing between dimensions. There are entities using the weakening barriers for their own purposes. The Dimensional Ripper, Naruto interjected. The creature I was fighting before I got sent here. Yes, Diana confirmed. And others like it. They are servants of Song. Ething ancient and powerful. A being that exists between dimensions and seeks to harness the energy of the convergence. Hancock exchanged glances with Elder Nyan before addressing Diana again. You Street. Ill have not explained why we should trust you. Words, even delivered with conviction, prove nothing. Diana considered this, then stepped forward onto the beach. The Kuja warriors tensed, but she made no threatening moves. Instead, she knelt and pressed her palm against the sand. I offer goodwill through action, then. The dimensional rifts will not wait for us to resolve our doubts. She closed her eyes in concentration, and a soft blue light emanated from her hand, spreading through the sand in a widening circle. What is she doing? Sandersonia whispered. Naruto stared in fascination. It feels like she's stabilizing something. As the blue light faded, Diana stood again. There was a dimensional fracture beginning to form beneath this shore, a small rift that would have widened over time, allowing hostile entities passage. I have sealed it temporarily. Before Hancock could respond, a sentry called from the cliff edge. Snake Princess. Eastern Village reports strange lights in the sky. They request immediate assistance. Hancock's decision was immediate. Marigold, gather a squadron and investigate. Sandersonia, secure the palace and alert the elders. She turned to Diana, her expression hard. If you truly come in peace, you will help us address this disturbance. Consider it a test of your intentions. I would have suggested the same, Diana replied with a nod. What about me? Naruto asked. I can help too. Quote. Hancock appeared ready to refuse, but Elder Nyan intervened. The outsider's powers were effective against the Sea King. His assistance may prove valuable again. After a moment's hesitation, Hancock nodded curtly. Very well, but you stay within my sight at all times. Naruto grinned. Wouldn't dream of wandering off. The ghost of a smile flitted across Hancock's face before she caught herself, immediately resuming her cold demeanor. We leave immediately. Ran, bring the warriors' equipment. Within minutes, they were moving through the jungle at a rapid pace. Hancock leading with Naruto and Diana close behind. A dozen Kuja warriors followed, moving through the dense vegetation with practiced ease. Despite never having met before, Naruto noticed that Diana matched the Amazons' movements perfectly, as if she'd trained in similar terrain her entire life. So, Naruto began as they ran. Your island is like Amazon Lily but in another dimension. Diana nodded. Themyscira and Amazon Lily appear to be parallel developments, warrior societies of women who separated themselves from the outside world. Though our histories and reasons differ, the similarities are striking. Is that why you can understand each other? Naruto had been wondering about this since her arrival. I mean, different worlds should have different languages, right? A perceptive observation, Diana replied. The convergence is harmonizing certain aspects of our realities. Language appears to be one of them, though I suspect the effect is strongest among those of us who have crossed dimensional boundaries. Hancock, running ahead of them, spoke without looking back. Save your breath for the journey. The eastern village is still some distance away. They continued, in silence for several minutes before Diana spoke again, this time addressing Hancock directly. Your warriors are exceptionally skilled. The way they move through this terrain shows lifelong training. Hancock glanced back briefly, seemingly surprised by the genuine compliment. The Kuja train from childhood to master both combat and survival in all parts of our island. As do the Amazons of Themyscira, Diana replied. Though we favor different weapons, it seems. The tension between them eased slightly as they continued their journey, finding unexpected common ground in their warrior traditions. Naruto observed the interaction with interest, noting how two proud women from different worlds were beginning to establish a tentative respect. As they neared the eastern village, the jungle canopy thinned, revealing ominous swirling lights in the sky ahead. What had appeared as distant flashes from the western shore now manifested as a churning vortex of unnatural colors hanging directly above the village. That looks familiar, Naruto muttered grimly, just like the portal that brought me here. The sounds of combat reached them before they cleared the tree line, screams, the clash of weapons, and a strange humming that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. They emerged into a scene of chaos. The Eastern Village, a collection of perhaps 50 structures built in the same serpentine style as the main city, was under attack. Bizarre creatures with translucent, shifting bodies moved through the streets, their forms constantly changing as though unable to decide on a single shape. They seemed to phase in and out of reality, making them difficult targets for the defending Kuja. Dimensional entities, Diana confirmed grimly, drawing her sword. They exist partially in multiple realities at once. Hancock surveyed the battlefield with the experienced eye of a commander. My warriors cannot harm them effectively. Their attacks pass through the creatures as if they're made of mist. We need to anchor them to this reality first, Diana explained, uncoiling her golden lasso. Then they become vulnerable. Naruto formed a familiar hand sign. I'm on it. Shadow clone jutsu. 20 clones appeared around him. Each as solid and determined as the original. Hancock raised an eyebrow, still not entirely accustomed to this display of power. Spread out and help evacuate the villagers. Naruto commanded his clones. The rest of us will handle these things. Hancock nodded in approval, ran, coordinate with the clones to secure the civilians. The rest of you, focus on containment. Keep the creatures away from the evacuation routes. Diana twirled her lasso, its golden length beginning to glow with divine energy. I'll anchor them. You two strike when they solidify. Without another word, the three warriors charged into the fray, moving with perfect coordination despite having never fought together before. Diana's lasso snaked out with impossible precision, wrapping around one of the dimensional entities. The creature shrieked, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, as the golden rope forced it fully into the current reality. Now, Diana called. Hancock leapt forward, her leg extended in a devastating kick. Where before such attacks had passed through the creatures, this time her foot connected solidly. The impact created a visible S-hawkwave as the creature was sent hurtling through the air, crashing into a stone wall with enough force to crack the masonry. Meanwhile, Naruto engaged another entity, using his clones to herd it toward Diana's position. As her lasso ensnared it, he formed a Rasengan, noticing that the swirling chakra seemed more stable than it had during the Sea King battle. Rasengan, he shouted, driving the spiraling sphere directly into the creature's core. The entity dissolved into particles of light that scattered and faded. Throughout the village, similar scenes played out as the three warriors established their rhythm. Diana anchored the creatures to reality with her lasso, while Hancock and Naruto delivered the finishing blows. The remaining Kuja warriors protected the civilians and maintained a perimeter, preventing any entities from escaping into the jungle. As they fought, Naruto noticed something strange about the vortex above them. It was growing larger, its churning energies intensifying with each creature they defeated. Something's not right, he called to his companions. The portal's feeding off the energy released when we destroy these things. Diana glanced upward, her expression darkening. He's right. This is a harvesting operation. The creatures are conduits. Then we need to close the portal itself, Hancock concluded, delivering another powerful kick to a newly anchored entity. Diana nodded. We need to reach the center of the disturbance. The portal must have a physical anchor point somewhere in the village. They fought their way toward the center of the settlement, where the vortex appeared to be directly connected to a small stone structure, a temple or shrine of some kind. As they approached, the air grew thick with dimensional energy, making movement increasingly difficult. There, Diana pointed to a glowing object at the temple's center, a crystalline shard that pulsed with the same chaotic energy as the vortex above. The anchor point, surrounding the temple were larger, more substantial entities, not the shifting, amorphous creatures they'd been fighting, but humanoid figures with armor that seemed to be made of the same material as the crystal. They moved with purpose, clearly protecting the anchor point. Those look more intelligent than the others, Naruto observed. And a lot more dangerous. Hancock's eyes narrowed. Then we eliminate them first. Before either of her companions could respond, Hancock strode forward, her presence commanding such authority that even the dimensional guardians paused. She struck a pose, looking over her shoulder at the armored figures with an expression of utter disdain. Mero mero mellow, she called, forming a heart shape with her hands. Pink energy shot forth in a heart-shaped beam, washing over the guardians. To Naruto's amazement, the armored figures began to turn to stone, starting from their extremities and working inward. Unlike the Sea King, these entities were apparently susceptible to Hancock's devil fruit power. Impressive, Diana murmured, genuine respect in her voice. My ability affects those who feel attraction, Hancock explained, a hint of pride in her tone. These entities may not be human, but they clearly experience desire in some form. Not all the Guardians had been caught in Hancock's technique, however. 3 remained, advancing with weapons drawn, strange blasts that seemed to cut through reality itself, leaving brief tears in the air where they passed. I'll handle them, Diana declared, stepping forward to meet the threat. Her movements were a blur of lethal grace as she engaged all 3 simultaneously, her sword and bracers deflecting their dimensional blades with precision that defied human limits. Naruto seized the opportunity to dash toward the temple, intent on destroying the crystal anchor. As he approached, he felt resistance in the air, as though reality itself was pushing back against him. The dimensional barrier is strongest near the anchor point, Diana called out between strikes. You'll need to disrupt it before you can reach the crystal. Naruto nodded, focusing his chakra. The 9 tails stirred within him, its energy responding to the dimensional distortions. For a moment, Naruto considered drawing on its power but hesitated. In this unfamiliar environment, with these new allies, unleashing the fox might create more problems than it solved. Instead, he created more shadow clones, forming a chain that extended toward the crystal. Each clone struggled against the dimensional resistance, moving inches where they would normally cover meters. The final clone in the chain managed to get within striking distance of the crystal but was repelled by an invisible force field. It's protected, Naruto called back. I can't get close enough. Hancock finished dispatching the last of the smaller entities and turned toward the temple. The barrier must have a weakness. No defense is absolute. Diana, having decisively defeated the 3 guardians, joined them at the temple entrance. She studied the crystal and the surrounding energy field with experienced eyes. It's oscillating between dimensional frequencies, she observed. We need to synchronize our attack with the moment it phases into our reality. How do we know when that happens? Naruto asked. Diana uncoiled her lasso again. The lasso of truth exists in all dimensions simultaneously. It can serve as a guide. She cast the golden rope toward the crystal, not attempting to touch it but letting it hover nearby. Watch the lasso's glow. When it intensifies, the crystal is more present in our reality. They observed for several seconds, noting the subtle fluctuations in the lasso's golden light. The pattern was irregular but discernible, approximately every 12 seconds. The glow would brighten briefly. There's our window, Hancock said. But it's too brief for a physical attack to reach it. Naruto grinned. Maybe for a normal attack, but I've got something that might work. He held out his hand, focusing intently as chakra began to swirl above his palm. This time, however, instead of forming a standard Rasengan, he compressed the energy further, adding his wind nature to the mix. The sphere grew smaller but more intense, with visible blades of wind chakra extending from its core. Wind style. Rasenshuriken, he explained. It's one of my strongest techniques, and it doesn't need to make physical contact to do damage. Diana nodded appreciatively. The dimensional disruption at the moment of phase shift will make it even more effective. Be ready. They watched the lassos glow, waiting for the perfect moment. Hancock and Diana positioned themselves to defend against any remaining entities drawn to their presence. Now, Diana called as the lasso flared brightly. Naruto hurled the Rasenshuriken with perfect timing. The spinning disc of chakra sliced through the momentarily weakened barrier, connecting directly with the crystal anchor. Upon impact, the Rasenshuriken expanded explosively, its blades of wind chakra shredding the crystal at a microscopic level. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The crystal shattered with a sound like reality itself breaking, and the vortex above began to collapse inward. Dimensional energy surged wildly, creating a momentary backlash that threatened to engulf the entire village. It's destabilizing, Diana warned. The collapse could take half the island with it. Without hesitation, Diana launched herself into the air, directly toward the collapsing vortex. She raised her bracers, crossing them before her face in a defensive posture. As she reached the center of the disturbance, she uncrossed her arms in a powerful motion, releasing a shockwave of her own energy that counteracted the dimensional collapse. The vortex imploded with a final flash of light, leaving nothing but clear sky above. Diana descended gracefully, landing beside her companions with a slight smile. That was unexpected, Hancock admitted, looking at Diana with newfound respect. Your powers are not devil fruit-based either. I was blessed by the gods of Olympus, Diana explained simply. Though in this world, such beings may be known by different names. Naruto stared at her in amazement. That was incredible. You literally just punched a dimensional portal closed. Diana's smile widened slightly. Sometimes the direct approach is best. As the immediate danger passed, the Kuja warriors began to emerge from their defensive positions, checking on the villagers and assessing the damage. Fortunately, there appeared to be no casualties, though several buildings had been severely damaged during the battle. Elder Nyan made her way through the aftermath, her aged face set in an expression of grave concern. This attack was more coordinated than the Sea King incident, she observed. Whoever is manipulating these dimensional breaches is becoming more strategic. And more desperate, Diana added. This was an attempt to harvest energy, specifically, the energy released during dimensional transitions. Hancock surveyed the damaged village, her regal bearing undiminished by the battle. We should return to the palace. The council needs to hear of these developments, and we must prepare for further attacks. As they gathered to depart, Naruto approached one of the fallen guardian figures. Examining its partially petrified form, these weren't just mindless monsters. They had a purpose, a plan. Indeed, Diana agreed, joining him. And they were specifically targeting this location. She knelt beside the fallen guardian, studying its armor more closely. Look at these symbols. They're similar to markings found in ancient ruins on Themyscira. Hancock, despite her earlier distrust, found herself drawn into their investigation. What do they signify? They reference something called the nexus of all realities, Diana explained. A theoretical point where all dimensions intersect. Elder Nyan's eyes widened. The ancient texts speak of such a place, a crossroads of worlds that appears only during the Great Convergence. A thoughtful silence fell over the group as they considered the implications. Finally, Naruto spoke what they were all thinking. If someone's trying to control this nexus thing, they could potentially control all dimensions, couldn't they? Diana nodded grimly. Or destroy them all if they fail. The journey back to the palace was considerably more subdued than their outward trip. The casual observers might have seen merely 3 powerful warriors and their entourage. But those closer could sense the weight of their thoughts. 3 individuals from different worlds, suddenly bound by a common threat to all their realities. As night fell over Amazon Lily, Naruto found himself in comfortable but secure quarters within the palace complex. True to Hancock's word, his possessions had been returned, though 2 Kuja warriors remained stationed outside his door at all times. The room itself was spacious and airy, with large windows overlooking a lush garden. The architecture was unlike anything in Konoha. Curved lines reminiscent of serpents featured prominently in the design. And the furniture was built for both beauty and practicality. Despite being essentially a prisoner, Naruto had to admit he'd been given quite luxurious accommodations. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called, expecting one of the guards with his evening meal. Instead, Elder Nyan entered, her small frame moving with surprising agility for one so aged. She carried a large, ancient-looking scroll under one arm. Elder, Naruto said respectfully, rising to greet her. I wasn't expecting you. Sit, young man, she replied, gesturing to the cushions arranged near a low table. There are matters we must discuss away from the politics of the council chamber. Naruto complied, watching curiously as she unrolled the scroll on the table. The parchment was yellowed with age, covered in writings and diagrams in a language he couldn't read. This is one of our most ancient records, Nyan explained, her finger tracing symbols that see. Med to shift slightly as Naruto tried to focus on them. It describes the last convergence, over 1,000 years ago. You can read this? Naruto asked, impressed. Few can, she acknowledged. The language predates even the Void Century, a time in our world's history that has been deliberately erased from most records. She pointed to a specific diagram, a representation of multiple spheres interconnected by glowing lines. This depicts what we now face, multiple dimensions temporarily aligning, creating pathways between worlds that are normally separate. Like what brought me here, and allowed Diana to cross from her world. Precisely. Nyan nodded. But such natural crossings are merely a symptom of the larger phenomenon. What concerns me are these. She indicated symbols around the edges of the diagram, ominous glyphs that seem to reach toward the interconnected spheres like hungry claws. Entities that exist between dimensions, she explained. Beings that normally cannot enter any single reality fully. But during a convergence, they can cross over completely. Naruto finished, understanding dawning. The Dimensional Ripper, the Sea King, those creatures at the village, they're all connected to these. What would you call them? Dimensional parasites. A fitting description, Nyan agreed. But there appears to be purpose behind their actions, suggesting intelligence directing them. Naruto frowned, remembering his battle with the Ripper. The creature that sent me here mentioned something about a catalyst. It seemed specifically interested in me, or maybe in the Nine Tails. Elder Nyan's eyes sharpened with interest. Nine Tails. Naruto hesitated. He hadn't intended to reveal this particular aspect of himself so soon, but the situation called for honesty. Where I come from, there are 9 powerful beings made of pure chakra, the tailed beasts. The strongest is the 9-tailed fox, which was sealed inside me when I was a baby. He placed a hand over his stomach, where the seal remained. I'm what's called a Jinchuriki, a human container for one of these beasts. To her credit, Elder Nyan showed no fear or disgust at this revelation, only thoughtful consideration. That would explain the unusual energy pattern you exhibit. Our warriors with observation haki have noted your aura is complex. Is that bad? Naruto asked cautiously. Not necessarily, she replied. But it may explain why you specifically were pulled through the dimensional barrier. If these entities seek power to facilitate the convergence, a being containing 2 distinct energy sources would be valuable indeed. The implications settled uncomfortably over Naruto. So I was targeted on purpose. It seems likely, Nyan confirmed. And it raises another concern. If one Jinchuriki was valuable to them, what might they attempt next? Before Naruto could respond, another knock came at the door, more forceful than Elder Nyan's had been. Without waiting for permission, the door swung open to reveal Boa Hancock. Still dressed in her battle attire from earlier. Elder Nyan, she acknowledged with mild surprise. I was not informed you would be visiting the prisoner. Not a prisoner, Snake Princess. Nyan corrected gently. A guest under supervision, as the council decreed. Hancock's expression remained neutral, though Naruto thought he detected a flicker of embarrassment. Of course. I merely came to inform him that Diana of Themyscira has requested his presence at tomorrow's council meeting. She believes his perspective on the dimensional entities may prove valuable. A wise suggestion, Nyan agreed, carefully rolling the ancient scroll. I was just discussing the historical precedents for our current situation with him. Hancock's eyes fell to the scroll, widening slightly when she recognized it. The Convergence Codex. That document is restricted to the highest council members. And I have determined that sharing its contents is necessary given our circumstances, Nyan replied calmly. Her age and wisdom allowing her to stand firm even against the Snake Princess's displeasure. A tense silence stretched between them before Hancock relented with a slight nod. Very well. The council meets at dawn. She turned to leave but paused at the doorway. Naruto. Yes, he replied, surprised by the direct address. Your performance in battle today was adequate. With that backhanded compliment, she departed, leaving Naruto staring after her in confusion. Elder Nyan chuckled softly. Do not take offense. From our Snake Princess, that is high praise indeed. She's complicated, Naruto observed diplomatically. More than you know, Nyan replied, gathering her scroll. Boa Hancock's history with the outside world, particularly with men, is one of pain and betrayal. That she tolerates your presence at all is remarkable. Naruto frowned. What happened to her? That is her story to share, not mine, Nyan said firmly. But know this, her cold demeanor and the laws of Amazon Lily exist for reasons beyond mere tradition. Our isolation is a choice born of bitter experience. She moved toward the door, pausing to look back at him with surprising gentleness. Rest, Naruto Uzumaki. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, and you will need your strength. After she left, Naruto sat alone with his thoughts, the elder's words echoing in his mind. There, was clearly more to Boa Hancock than her beautiful exterior and cold demeanor suggested, layers of complexity and pain beneath the perfect facade. Outside his window, the moon rose over Amazon Lily, casting silver light over the unfamiliar landscape. Somewhere in another part of the palace, Diana of Themyscira was likely contemplating the same convergence of fates that had brought three warriors from different worlds together. And beyond the dimensional barriers, something ancient and patient watched them all, its plans accelerating as the convergence drew ever closer. Diana stood on a balcony, overlooking the moonlit jungle of Amazon Lily, the night air carrying unfamiliar scents and sounds. Though physically similar to Themyscira in many ways, this island had its own distinct character, wilder, perhaps, with an underlying current of danger that never quite faded. She sensed a presence approaching and turned to find Hancock standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable in the shadows. "You requested private audience," Hancock stated, stepping onto the balcony. In the moonlight, her beauty was almost otherworldly, her features perfect beyond mortal measure. Diana nodded. "Thank you for coming. I felt we should speak directly, away from the politics of your council and the ears of others." "About what?" Hancock's tone remained cool, though not hostile. "About the true nature of the convergence." Diana moved to the balcony's edge, gesturing for Hancock to join her. "And about the history our islands share, a history neither of us fully understands." Hancock hesitated before joining her, maintaining a careful distance. "What do you mean by history? Our worlds have never before connected." "Not in our lifetimes," Diana agreed. "But the ancient texts of Themyscira speak of a time when our islands were one, a single paradise that was split across dimensions during the last convergence." This clearly surprised Hancock. "That contradicts our own history. Amazon Lily has existed in the calm belt since before the Void Century, and Themyscira has existed in its own pocket dimension since the Age of Olympus," Diana countered. "Yet our cultures share too many similarities to be coincidence, warrior women. Isolation from the world of men, even our fighting styles have common roots." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Your elder Nyan showed me your convergence codex. We have its counterpart on Themyscira, the Concordance of Worlds. Together, they tell a more complete story." Hancock's interest was clearly piqued despite her attempt to remain aloof. "And what story is that?" "That our islands were once a single civilization, powerful women warriors who guarded the nexus of all realities. During the last convergence, a cataclysmic event forced our ancestors to split the island across dimensional barriers to prevent some great power from controlling the nexus." Diana turned to face Hancock directly. "I believe that power is awakening again, using current convergence to reclaim what it lost centuries ago." Hancock absorbed this information in silence, her gaze drifting over the moonlit landscape of her kingdom. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost some of its imperious edge. "Even if this is true, why come to me directly? Why not present this to the council?" "Because politics will slow our response," Diana replied honestly. "And because I sensed in you a leader who places her people's safety above all else, even ancient prejudices." A ghost of a smile touched Hancock's lips. "You presume much about someone you've just met." "I observe," Diana corrected gently. "Your actions speak of a woman who has endured hardship and emerged stronger, who protects fiercely what she loves." Something vulnerable flashed briefly in Hancock's yes before her mask of indifference returned. "And what of the outsider? The man, how does he factor into this convergence?" "Naruto Uzumaki," Diana said thoughtfully. "His arrival was no accident. He possesses power unlike anything in either of our worlds, a duality of energy that resonates with the dimensional barriers themselves. The nine-tailed beast within him," Hancock stated, surprising Diana. "Yes, Elder Nyan informed me after their conversation this evening." "Then you understand why he may be crucial to addressing the coming crisis," Diana pressed. "His presence on Amazon Lily, while challenging your traditions, may be necessary for all our survival." Hancock turned away, her posture stiffening slightly. "The laws of Amazon Lily have protected us for generations. Making exceptions is difficult. All traditions must sometimes bend to necessity," Diana observed. "On Themyscira, the arrival of a man once heralded great change for my people as well." We feared what his presence might mean, yet ultimately, opening ourselves to the outside world strengthened us. A long silence fell between them, filled only by the sounds of the night jungle. Finally, Hancock spoke again, her voice softer than before. There is wisdom in your words, Diana of Themyscira. But trust does not come easily to me or my people. She turned back, meeting Diana's gaze directly. Prove that this alliance benefits Amazon Lily. And you will have my support. Until then, my priority remains the protection of my kingdom, by whatever means necessary. Diana recognized both the concession and the warning in Hancock's words. A fair position. I ask only that you keep an open mind as we learn more about the convergence and its implications. Hancock nodded once, a gesture that somehow managed to be both acknowledgement and dismissal. As she turned to leave, Diana called after her softly. One more thing, Snake Princess. Hancock paused, looking back over her shoulder. The man, Naruto, he is unusual even by the standards of his world. I sense a purity of purpose in him that is rare in any dimension. Diana smiled slightly. He may surprise you yet. Something unidentifiable flickered across Hancock's perfect features before she composed herself. We shall see. With that, she departed, her footsteps fading into the quiet night. Diana remained on the balcony, her thoughts turning to the complex web of relationships and politics that now surrounded them. Three warriors from three worlds, each with their own strengths and perspectives, thrust together by cosmic forces beyond their control. The convergence was accelerating. She could feel it in the subtle wrongness of the air, the occasional shimmer at the corner of her vision where reality seemed to briefly overlap with another. Time was growing short. In the distance, beyond the palace walls, strange lights flickered briefly in the jungle before disappearing, another dimensional ripple making itself known. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations. And somewhere, in the spaces between worlds, their true enemy was watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Morning dawned over Amazon Lily with an unnatural quality to the light, colors slightly too vivid, shadows a touch too sharp. Throughout the night, reports had filtered in from across the island of strange phenomena, plants growing in impossible patterns, animals behaving erratically, and brief glimpses of landscapes that didn't belong. The convergence was accelerating. Naruto stood before the council chamber, his mind still processing everything he'd learned the previous day. Beside him, Diana waited with the serene patience of an immortal, while Hancock paced several steps away, issuing last-minute instructions to her warriors. The massive doors swung open, revealing the circular chamber now filled to capacity. Every elder had assembled, along with tribal leaders from across the island. The gravity of the situation was evident in their solemn expressions. Elder Nyan gestured for them to enter. The council is prepared to hear your testimonies regarding the dimensional threat. As they took their places in the center of the chamber, Naruto couldn't help but notice the stark division among the assembled Kuja. Some regarded Diana with cautious respect, while others viewed her with open suspicion. Their reactions to him were even more repolarized, ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Elder Nyan called the council to order, her small frame somehow commanding the attention of everyone present. Sisters of Amazon Lily, we face an unprecedented crisis. The barriers between dimensions are weakening, allowing incursions into our sacred home. We have gathered to determine our response to this threat. She gestured toward Diana. Princess Diana of Themyscira has crossed from her world to warn us of the convergence. I invite her to share what she knows. Diana stepped forward, her presence immediately drawing all eyes. She spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to addressing councils of power. Honorable elders of Amazon Lily, what you are experiencing is the beginning of a dimensional convergence, a rare cosmic event where multiple realities briefly align. During this alignment, the boundaries between worlds thin, allowing passage between dimensions normally separated by the Great Void. She paused, allowing her words to settle before continuing. But natural passage is only part of what occurs during a convergence. There are entities that exist between dimensions, beings that normally cannot fully manifest in any single reality. They have been waiting for this opportunity for centuries, and now they seek to manipulate the convergence for their own purposes. Murmurs spread through the chamber as the elders digested this information. And what purposes would those be? One of the elders demanded. Control of the nexus of all realities, Diana replied gravely. A theoretical point where all dimensions intersect. Whoever controls the nexus during the convergence could potentially reshape reality itself, or destroy it entirely. The murmurs grew louder, tinged with alarm. Elder Nyan raised a hand for silence. Diana of Themyscira has shared with me ancient texts from her world that corroborate our own most sacred records, she announced. The Convergence Codex and the Concordance of Worlds Telephone. Parts of the same story, a story our ancestors deliberately separated to protect forbidden knowledge. This revelation caused an uproar among the elders. One of them, a woman with elaborate serpentine tattoos covering her arms, rose to her feet. If this is true, then we face more than just random incursions, she stated. We face a coordinated attempt to breach the nexus itself. The question becomes, where is this nexus located? All eyes turned to Diana, who met their gazes steadily. According to the combined texts, the nexus exists at the exact center point between Amazon Lily, Themyscira, and a third-dimensional anchor point, which I now believe to be Naruto Uzumaki's world. Attention shifted to Naruto, who straightened under their scrutiny. Elder Nyan nodded for him to speak. In my world, there's been no record of anything like this happening before, he began. But the creature that sent me here, the Dimensional Ripper, had been causing reality distortions around my village for weeks before it finally pulled me through. It specifically called me a catalyst for the convergence. Because of the beast sealed within you, Hancock interjected, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Naruto nodded, deciding complete honesty was necessary. I contain the nine-tailed fox, one of the most powerful chakra beings in my world. The Ripper seemed particularly interested in that energy, or maybe in how my human chakra and the fox's chakra exist together. Diana picked up the thread. The convergence requires immense energy to complete. The ancient texts describe three key components: divine energy, natural energy, and catalyst energy. I believe we represent these three components. She gestured to herself. Divine energy from my connection to the gods of Olympus. Then to Hancock. Natural energy from the inherent power of Amazon Lily and its connection to the primal forces. Finally, to Naruto. And catalyst energy from the dual-natured power within Naruto Uzumaki. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber as the implications settled in. It was Elder Nyan who finally spoke. If this assessment is correct, then all three of you are in grave danger. Whatever entity orchestrates these incursions will seek to capture or control you to facilitate the convergence. Exactly, Diana confirmed, and the attacks will only grow more frequent and coordinated as the convergence progresses. Hancock, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet during the discussion, finally stepped forward. Then our course is clear. We must locate this nexus point and secure it before our enemy does. Agreed, Diana said with a nod. But finding its exact location will be challenging. The coordinates in the ancient texts are deliberately obscured, written in a way that only makes sense when all three parts are combined. The central archive may contain additional information, Elder Saria suggested. Records from before the Void Century that have never been fully translated. Elder Nyan nodded thoughtfully. A wise suggestion. Diana, would you assist in examining these records? Your knowledge of the Themyscira texts may provide context for our own. Of course, Diana agreed. Though time is of the essence. The convergence appears to be accelerating faster than the ancient prophecies suggested. As if to emphasize her point, a low rumble shook the council chamber, causing fine dust to drift down from the ceiling. The tremor lasted only seconds but left an unmistakable impression of wrongness in its wake, as though reality itself were straining at the seams. What about me? Naruto asked once the tremor subsided. I want to help, but I don't exactly read ancient languages. Elder Nyan considered him for a moment. Your unique energy may help locate dimensional weak points. While Diana examines the archives with Elder Saria, you will accompany our scouts to survey the island for additional incursion sites. She turned to Hancock. Snake Princess, as ruler of Amazon Lily, you must prepare our warriors for what may come. If the dimensional barriers continue to weaken, we may face threats unlike any in our history. Hancock nodded, her expression resolute. The Kuja will be ready. She glanced briefly at Naruto and Diana. All of Amazon Lily will stand against this threat, alongside our allies. The slight hesitation before the word, allies, was noticeable. But the fact that she used it at all represented significant progress. Naruto caught Diana's eye, and they shared a moment of understanding. Hancock's acknowledgement of their partnership, however reluctant, was a crucial step forward. Elder Nyan concluded the council session with a final declaration. Let it be recorded that Amazon Lily faces a threat to all dimensions. In this unprecedented time, we set aside our traditional isolation to work with those from beyond our shores. May the wisdom of our ancestors guide us through the coming trials. As the council dispersed, Naruto found himself standing beside Hancock, an awkward silence stretching between them. Finally, he spoke. Thank you for supporting the alliance. I know it can't be easy, going against traditions that have protected your people for so long. Hancock's expression remained impassive, though something flickered in her eyes, surprise, perhaps, at his perception. Do not mistake pragmatism for trust, outsider. Amazon Lily's safety remains my only concern. I understand that, Naruto replied sincerely. Where I come from, I've seen what happens when people put rules above what's right. Sometimes protecting your precious people means taking risks and making difficult choices. For the briefest moment, Hancock's perfect mask slipped, revealing a flash of vulnerability beneath. Before she could respond, however, Sandersonia approached with urgent news. Sister, scouts report multiple dimensional disturbances along the northern shore. Something large appears to be attempting to cross over. Hancock's focus immediately shifted to this new threat, her commanding presence returning in full force. Gather the elite warriors. We move immediately. She glanced at Naruto. If you truly wish to help, now is your opportunity to prove it. I'm ready, he assured her, his expression determined. Just point me in the right direction. As they prepared to depart, Diana rejoined them, having already conferred with Elder Saria about the archives. The northern disturbances are concerning, she said without preamble. They match a pattern described in the Myskaron texts, preliminary incursions before a major breach. What exactly does that mean? Naruto asked as they hurried through the palace corridors. Diana's expression was grim. It means our enemy is testing Amazon Lily's defenses, looking for the path of least resistance. Once they find it, a full-scale invasion, Hancock finished, her voice cold with determination. Which they will not live to regret. As they emerged into the courtyard where Kuja warriors were already assembling, Naruto couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration for both women, each a leader in her own right, setting aside their differences in the face of a common threat. Despite the circumstances that had brought them together, he was beginning to see the potential strength in their unlikely alliance. The three warriors from three worlds stood together in the morning light, preparing to face whatever came through the thinning veil between dimensions. The convergence was only beginning, but in that moment, something else was converging as well, a bond. Forged in the crucible of shared danger, a connection that transcended their different origins. And somewhere, in the spaces between realities, the architect of the convergence observed this development with growing interest. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Whispers of Prophecy. The northern shore of Amazon Lily bore little resemblance to the beaches Naruto had seen thus far. Instead of gentle sands, jagged rocks rose from the turbulent waters, creating a natural barrier against seafaring invaders. Dense fog shrouded the coastline, lending an eerie quality to the already foreboding landscape. Through this mist, Naruto moved alongside Hancock and a contingent of elite Kuja warriors, while Diana scouted ahead. The dimensional disturbances had led them to this remote section of the island, a place the Amazons themselves rarely visited, according to Sandersonia. The northern peninsula has always been strange, the snake woman explained as they picked their way across the treacherous terrain. Compasses fail, plants grow in impossible ways, and some who venture too far simply disappear. You're just telling us this now? Naruto asked, eyeing the mist with newfound wariness. It was never relevant before. Hancock replied coolly. These areas have been forbidden to all but the most senior warriors for generations. As they rounded a particularly large outcropping, the mist parted to reveal Diana waiting atop a flat rock. Her expression thoughtful as she gazed inland. The disturbances are stronger here, she confirmed as they approached. But they're not recent. This entire Insula exists partially in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and has for centuries. Hancock frowned. That's impossible. We would have known. Would you? Diana's question held no accusation, merely curiosity. Your people avoid this area by ancient tradition. Perhaps that tradition began precisely because your ancestors understood its nature. Before Hancock could respond, Naruto's attention as caught by something in the rocks nearby, a flash of color unlike the gray stone surrounding them. He moved closer, brushing aside clinging vines to reveal what appeared to be a carved symbol partially embedded in the rock face. Hey, look at this, he called. There's something here. The others gathered around as Naruto cleared away more vegetation, revealing an intricate spiral pattern that seemed to glow faintly from within the stone. That's not a Kuja marking, Sandersonia observed, her serpentine form coiling with tension. Diana studied the symbol intently. It's similar to markings found on Themyscira's forbidden shores. They denote boundaries between dimensional planes. And look, Naruto pointed to the center of the spiral. That symbol is almost exactly like the one on my headband, the Leaf Village emblem. Hancock's eyes narrowed. This cannot be coincidence. No, Diana agreed. I believe we've found what we're looking for, a physical manifestation of the connection between our three worlds. She placed her palm against the spiral marking. The faint glow intensified briefly before spreading outward along previously invisible lines in the rock face, revealing a complex network of interconnected symbols that covered the entire cliff. It's a map, Diana breathed, her eyes widening in realization. A map of the dimensional barriers. As the glowing lines continued to spread, they illuminated what had been hidden by mist and vegetation. The cliff face wasn't natural at all, but a massive carved structure partially reclaimed by nature. Steps became visible, winding upward through the rock toward what appeared to be an entrance higher up. Ancient ruins, Hancock whispered, a rare hint of awe breaking through her composed exterior. Here, on Amazon Lily, all this time. And they were deliberately hidden, Diana added. Look at how the vegetation has been guided to conceal the structure. These aren't random growths, they're patterned. Naruto examined the newly revealed steps. Only one way to find out what's up there. With cautious determination, the group ascended the stone stairway. The higher they climbed, the stranger the environment became. Gravity seemed to shift subtly with each step, and occasionally their surroundings would appear to flicker, momentarily showing glimpses of different landscapes, a desert, a mountain peak, a city of impossible architecture. Reality is thin here, Diana explained, noticing Naruto's disoriented expression after a particularly vivid flicker. We're walking through a place that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. I'm starting to get why your ancestors avoided this area, Naruto remarked to Hancock, who had remained uncharacteristically silent during their ascent. Finally, they reached a plateau where the stairs opened onto a circular platform. At its center stood what appeared to be a temple, or what remained of one. The structure was partially collapsed, its once grand columns now broken and overgrown. Yet despite its ruined state, there was an undeniable power emanating from within. Wait, Hancock commanded as Naruto took a step toward the entrance. This place, it feels wrong. Not wrong, Diana corrected gently. Different. It exists outside normal dimensional boundaries. She approached one of the fallen columns, examining the carvings that spiraled along its length. The Say inscriptions match fragments found in Themyscira's oldest archives. They speak of guardians of the Nexus, who maintained the barriers between worlds. While Diana studied the ruins and Hancock conferred with her warriors, Naruto found himself drawn to a section of wall that remained largely intact. Unlike the other carvings, which appeared to be text in an unfamiliar language, this wall depicted a mural, figures locked in battle against a shadowy entity that loomed above them. Hey, he called, you should see this. Diana joined him first, her expression growing serious as she examined the mural. The Battle of Convergence, she said quietly. The last time the dimensional barriers weakened to this extent. Hancock approached more cautiously, her sisters flanking her protectively. What does it show? A warning, Diana replied, tracing the carved figures with her fingertips. During the previous convergence, something attempted to force its way through the Nexus, something powerful. Enough to threaten all connected realities. Naruto studied the mural more closely. Three figures stood prominently in the foreground, facing the shadowy entity. Though stylized, their attributes were distinct. One wielding what appeared to be a golden lasso, another with serpentine features, and a third surrounded by a spiraling energy reminiscent of chakra. "Is it just me," he said slowly, "or do those figures look familiar?" Diana nodded, her expression grave. The ancient texts speak of three guardians who would arise when the nexus was threatened, one blessed by the gods, one born of nature's power, and one who bridges opposing forces within themselves. "That can't be right," Hancock objected, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. "These carvings are centuries old. They cannot possibly depict us." "Not as specifically," Diana clarified, "but perhaps those who would fulfill the same roles during each convergence. The patterns of reality tend to repeat across cycles." As they discussed the implications, Naruto noticed something else in the mural, a smaller detail carved below the primary scene. It depicted what appeared to be an island splitting into three distinct pieces, each drifting into separate dimensional planes. "Look at this," he pointed. "Could this be showing how your island separated?" Diana examined the carving with growing interest. Yes, according to the concordance, after the last convergence was stabilized, the Guardians decided the nexus was too dangerous to remain accessible. They split their island into three parts, each existing in a different dimensional plane, to ensure no single entity could control all access points to the nexus. Themyscira, Amazon Lily, and Hancock began. "The land of fire, maybe," Naruto suggested, "or some part of my world that became the elemental nations." A thoughtful silence fell over the group as they absorbed this revelation. Their three worlds, seemingly unconnected until now, shared a history far deeper than any had suspected. "We should explore further," Diana finally said. "The answers we seek may lie deeper within." The interior of the temple was illuminated by an unnatural light that seemed to emanate from the stone itself, a pale, bluish glow that cast no shadows. The main chamber was circular, with a domed ceiling that appeared to reflect the night sky, though it was still daylight outside. At the center stood a raised dais, upon which rested a large crystal sphere. "The Nexus Orb," Diana breathed, approaching the dais with reverent caution. "I've seen references to this in the Myskaron archives, but many believed it was merely legend." Hancock held back, her natural wariness heightened in this strange environment. "What is its purpose?" "It's said to be a focus point, to view the connections between worlds without actually crossing dimensional boundaries," Diana explained. "A tool the ancient guardians used to monitor the nexus." Naruto approached the orb, fascinated by the swirling energies visible within its crystalline depths. As he drew near, the sphere's glow intensified, responding to his presence. "It recognizes you," Diana observed with interest. "Try touching it." "Are you sure that's wise?" Hancock interjected, a note of concern in her voice that surprised even herself. Naruto glanced at her, then back at the orb. Only one way to find out. Before anyone could object further, he placed his palm flat against the crystal's surface. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The sphere flared with blinding light, and the entire chamber seemed to shift around them. The walls became transparent, revealing what appeared to be a vast cosmos beyond, countless worlds suspended in an infinite void, connected by glowing filaments of energy. "The dimensional lattice," Diana whispered in awe. "The structure that binds all realities together." Within this cosmic display, three worlds glowed more brightly than the others, forming a triangle of light. At the precise center of this triangle, a nexus point pulsed with intense energy. "There," Diana pointed, "the nexus of all realities." Naruto stared in wonder at the visualization. "So that's what we're protecting. And what our enemy seeks to control," Hancock added grimly. As they watched, disturbing changes became visible within the dimensional lattice. Dark tendrils were spreading along the connecting filaments, like infection through veins. Where they touched, the natural connections became distorted, twisted. "The corruption is spreading faster than I feared," Diana said, her voice tightening with concern. "The dimensional barriers are already compromised in multiple locations." Suddenly, the orb pulsed with a different energy, and the cosmic view shifted to focus on a specific location, a familiar village surrounded by forests and mountains. "Konoha," Naruto exclaimed, recognizing his home immediately. The orb is showing me the Hidden Leaf Village. The view zoomed closer, revealing a scene that made Naruto's heart race. Dimensional rifts were opening throughout the village, similar to the disturbances they'd witnessed on Amazon Lily. Ninja were mobilizing to address these incursions. Led by familiar faces, Kakashi, Sakura, and a grim-faced Sasuke. "My friends," Naruto murmured. "They're fighting the same battle we are." The orb pulsed again, shifting to show a different location, an island of impossible beauty, with white marble structures and lush Mediterranean landscapes. Warriors in armor reminiscent of Diana's were engaged in battle against dimensional entities, similar to those that had attacked Amazon Lily. "Themyscira," Diana confirmed, her expression pained. "My sisters face the invasion as well." A third pulse revealed Amazon Lily from above, highlighting dozens of weak points in the dimensional barriers surrounding the island, places where incursions had already occurred or would soon. "The convergence is affecting all three anchor worlds simultaneously," Diana explained. "As the Nexus worlds, we're experiencing the effects first and most severely, but eventually, all connected realities will be affected." Naruto removed his hand from the orb, and the cosmic vision faded, returning the chamber to its previous state. The implications of what they'd seen hung heavy in the air. "My village is in danger," he said quietly. "I need to find a way back, to help them." "You cannot," Diana replied, her tone gentle but firm. "Not yet. The dimensional barriers are too unstable for controlled passage. Any attempt to force your way back could worsen the corruption. So I'm just supposed to stay here while my friends fight without me." Naruto's frustration was palpable. Hancock, who had been observing silently, surprised them both by stepping forward. "Your presence here serves your village as well. If what we've seen is true, then stabilizing the convergence from any of the three anchor points will benefit all worlds." Naruto looked at her in surprise, not expecting support from that quarter. Her eyes met his briefly before she looked away, a faint color rising to her cheeks. "The Snake Princess speaks wisely," Diana agreed. "Our priority must be understanding how to address the convergence itself. The ancient guardians found a way to stabilize the dimensional barriers during the last cycle. We must discover how they accomplished this." Their exploration continued deeper into the temple, where they discovered chambers filled with artifacts and inscriptions relating to the convergence. Diana moved from one to another, her knowledge of ancient languages allowing her to decipher portions of the text. According to these records, the previous guardians used their combined energies to create a stabilization matrix around the Nexus, he explained as they gathered in what appeared to be a central archive room. Each contributed a different type of power: divine energy, natural energy, and catalyst energy. "Just like you described to the council," Naruto noted. Diana nodded. "The pattern repeats with each convergence. But there's something troubling here." She indicated a section of text that seemed deliberately damaged, as if someone had tried to erase it. "Part of the record is missing, specifically the details about what happened after they stabilized the Nexus." "Could it have been damaged naturally, over time?" Hancock suggested. "No." Diana shook her head. "This was intentional. Someone didn't want this information preserved." As they pondered this mystery, Sandersonia approached from one of the adjoining chambers, her expression concerned. "Sister, the scouts report increasing disturbances across the island. More dimensional rifts are opening, larger than before." Hancock's focus immediately shifted to this more immediate threat. "We should return to the palace. The knowledge we've gained here must be shared with the council, and our defenses need to be reinforced." "Agreed," Diana said, "but we should ignite a team to continue studying these ruins. There may be more valuable information we haven't yet discovered." As they prepared to depart, Naruto took one last look at the Nexus orb, its crystal surface now dimmed to a subtle glow. The brief glimpse of Konoha had left him with a renewed determination, and a deep concern for those he'd left behind. The journey back to the Kuja Palace was tense, marked by increasingly frequent dimensional anomalies. Twice they had to alter their route to avoid areas where reality seemed to be actively breaking down, patches of forest where gravity reversed, or sections of path that looped back on themselves in impossible ways. By the time they reached the palace, reports were flooding in from all parts of Amazon Lily: strange weather patterns, animals mutating, and in some areas, objects appearing that belonged to neither their world nor any they recognized. Elder Nyan met them in the council chamber, her aged face lined with concern. The convergence accelerates beyond all prediction. Our warriors report dimensional entities appearing across the island, not in organized attacks like before, but random manifestations, as if they're slipping through weakening points in the barrier. The ruins confirmed our suspicions, Diana reported. Amazon Lily, Themyscira, and Naruto's world form the three anchor points of the Nexus. As the dimensional barriers continue to weaken, the convergence will eventually force all three to merge at the Nexus point. With catastrophic consequences for all realities, Hancock added, taking her place at the head of the council table. We must prepare for island-wide defense while we search for a solution. As the council discussed defensive strategies, Naruto found himself increasingly distracted. The image of Konoha under attack lingered in his mind, along with a growing sense of responsibility. If he truly was meant to be one of these guardians, then he needed to understand his role better. Their muse, be a way to communicate between worlds, he said suddenly, interrupting the tactical discussion. The ancient guardians would have needed to coordinate their efforts across the dimensions. Elder Nyan considered this. The archives mention a communion pool through which the elders could speak to their counterparts in the sister islands. But its location was lost generations ago. Not lost, Diana corrected. Hidden. In the ruins, I saw references to 3 sacred sites on each island, places where the dimensional barriers are naturally thinner. If the communion pool still exists, it would be at one of these sites. The sacred hot spring, Sandersonia suggested. It's said to have healing properties beyond normal water, and has been reserved for the royal family and elders since ancient times. Hancock nodded slowly. The spring has always felt different. As a child, I sometimes thought I heard voices in the water, though I was told it was merely the spirits of our ancestors. Or, the voices of your counterparts in other dimensions, Diana suggested. If the spring is indeed a communion point, it might allow Naruto to contact his world. Hope surged in Naruto's chest. We have to try. Hancock hesitated only briefly before nodding. The spring is within the royal compound, accessible only through my private chambers. She rose gracefully. I will take you there myself. The statement caused a ripple of surprise through the council. For the Snake Princess to allow a man access to her private domain was unprecedented. Several elders exchanged meaningful glances, but none dared object directly. Elder Nyan, however, smiled faintly. A wise decision, Snake Princess. If the sacred spring can indeed serve as a communication point, it may prove crucial to coordinating our efforts across dimensions. As the council adjourned to implement the defensive strategies they'd discussed, Hancock led Naruto and Diana through the palace's inner corridors. The royal compound was more elaborately decorated than the rest of the palace, with rare woods, precious stones, and exotic fabrics adorning every surface. These are my private quarters, Hancock announced as they entered. A spacious chamber dominated by an enormous canopied bed. The entrance to the sacred spring is through there. She indicated an ornate door on the far wall, carved with serpentine designs. Naruto tried not to look too closely at the personal items scattered around the room. A brush with long black hairs still tangled in its bristles, a half-empty cup of tea on a side table, a silken robe draped carelessly across a chair. This glimpse into Hancock's private world felt strangely intimate, a privilege he suspected few had ever been granted. The door opened to reveal a natural cavern, softly lit by phosphorescent crystals embedded in the walls. At its center bubbled a spring of crystal-clear water, steam rising from its surface to create a perpetual mist throughout the chamber. The water glowed with a faint blue luminescence similar to the Nexus orb they'd seen in the ruins. The sacred spring has been used by the rulers of Amazon Lily for generations, Hancock explained, her voice softening in this serene environment. It is said to heal any wound, cure any illness, and reveal truths hidden from ordinary sight. Diana approached the water's edge, kneeling to examine it more closely. The energy signature is identical to the dimensional boundaries we observed in the ruins. This spring exists simultaneously in all 3 anchor worlds. Naruto joined her, staring into the luminescent depths. So if I were to, talk to it, meditate, how exactly do I use it to contact Konoha? Physical contact should establish the connection, Diana explained. Focus your thoughts on those you wish to reach, and the spring will do the rest, at least in theory. Hancock remained by the entrance, watching with an unreadable expression as Naruto removed his jacket and sandals before sitting at the edge of the spring. He dipped his hands into the water, surprised by the pleasant tingling sensation that immediately spread up his arms. It feels like chakra, he murmured. But different, purer somehow. Focus on your village, Diana encouraged. Visualize those you wish to contact. Naruto closed his eyes, concentrating on the image of Konoha, the Hokage monument, the academy, Ichiraku Ramen. He thought of Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi, whom he'd seen battling the dimensional rifts in the Nexus Orb's vision. He reached for them with his mind, feeling the spring's energy responding to his intent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the surface of the water began to change, images forming within its depths. The mist rising from the spring coalesced into a ghostly projection, a three-dimensional scene of the Hokage's office. Tsunade sat at her desk, surrounded by familiar faces, Shizune, Kakashi, Shikamaru, and others. They appeared to be in the middle of a crisis meeting, their expressions grim as they discussed something urgently. It's working, Naruto breathed. I can see them. Can they see you? Diana asked, careful not to disturb the connection by touching the water herself. Naruto leaned closer to the projection. Granny Tsunade, Kakashi-sensei, can you hear me? The figures continued their discussion, showing no reaction to his voice. Frustrated, Naruto tried again, pushing more chakra into the spring. The images flickered briefly, and for a second, Tsunade looked up, her expression confused, as if she'd heard something but couldn't identify the source. Something's blocking the full connection, Diana observed. The dimensional barriers are too compromised for clear communication. Naruto refused to give up. Closing his eyes again, he reached deeper, drawing on more of his chakra, and instinctively, on the Nine Tails power as well. The water began to bubble more vigorously, its glow intensifying to a brilliant azure. Within the projection, Tsunade suddenly stood, her eyes widening. Did you feel that? That chakra? Naruto, Kakashi confirmed, his visible eye narrowing. But how? I'm here, Naruto called, excitement surging through him. I'm trapped in another dimension. There's a convergence happening. All our worlds are in danger. The projection flickered again, more violently this time. For a brief moment, the ion seemed to strengthen. Tsunade looked directly at where Naruto's voice would be coming from, her expression shocked. Naruto, where are you? We've been searching since you disappeared during the battle with the dimensional creature. I'm on an island called Amazon Lily, in another world. The creature was part of something bigger, a dimensional convergence that's threatening all our realities. The connection wavered, the projection becoming increasingly unstable. Tsunade's voice came through in fragments. Found scrolls in the Forbidden Archive, ancient warnings about convergence cycle, trying to stabilize the rifts. Sasuke believes. Before she could finish, the projection collapsed entirely, the spring's water returning to its normal state despite Naruto's efforts to maintain the connection. No, he cried in frustration, splashing the water as if that might bring the images back. We were just starting to communicate. Diana placed a hand on his shoulder. You established contact, however briefly. That's significant. It proves the connection between worlds still exists. But I couldn't tell them anything useful, Naruto argued. They don't know what we're facing or how to fight it. They know more than you think, Hancock observed from where she'd been watching. Your Tsunade mentioned ancient scrolls and stabilization efforts. They've discovered their part of the puzzle, just as we've found ours. Naruto hadn't expected this insight from Hancock, and he looked at her with new appreciation. She met his gaze briefly before looking away, that same faint color rising to her cheeks. The Snake Princess is right, Diana agreed. The fact that all three worlds are independently researching the convergence suggests the pattern is unfolding as it should. Each anchor point contributes differently to the solution. Naruto rose from the spring's edge, water dripping from his hands as he absorbed this perspective. I guess that makes sense. Still, I wish I could have told them I'm okay, at least. They sensed your chakra, Hancock said, her voice softer than usual. They know you live. For warriors, Sometimes that knowledge alone provides strength. The "re" was something in her tone, a hint of personal understanding, that caught Naruto's attention. Before he could respond, however, a sudden tremor shook the chamber, causing ripples across the spring's her face and dislodging small stones from the ceiling. The dimensional instabilities are worsening, Diana observed grimly. We should rejoin the council to coordinate the island's defenses. As they aid their way back through Hancock's private chambers, another, stronger tremor struck. This one was accompanied by a flash of disorienting energy that momentarily distorted their surroundings. The wall seemed to stretch and warp before snapping back to normal. That was different from the previous disturbances, Diana noted, her expression concerned. More directed, somehow. Naruto felt it too, a deliberate quality to the energy. As if something were actively pushing against the dimensional barriers rather than simply taking advantage of existing weaknesses. Someone's trying to break through, he said. The realization dawning with chilling clarity. Specifically here, at the palace. Hancock's expression hardened instantly. An attack on the seat of power. Tactical. She moved swiftly to a ornate cabinet, retrieving a small golden den mushi. Elite guards to the royal compound immediately. Dimensional incursion in progress. They barely had time to prepare before the air in the sea. Enter of Hancock's chamber began to distort, stretching and twisting until it tore open with a sound like reality itself screaming in pain. Through this jagged rift stepped a figure that made all three warriors tense in preparation for battle. The entity was humanoid but clearly not human. Tall and regal, its body appeared to be composed of constantly shifting matter that never quite settled on a single form or color. Only its eyes remained constant, ancient, calculating orbs that gleamed with intelligence and purpose. At last, it spoke, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The convergence triad, gathered in one place. How convenient. Hancock was the first to respond, stepping forward with imperious disdain. You trespass in my private chambers, creature. Your existence is forfeit. The entity regarded her with something like amusement. Boa Hancock, Snake Princess of Amazon Lily. Your pride remains unchanged across convergence cycles. Its gaze shifted to Diana. And Diana of Themyscira, daughter of Hippolyta, blessed by gods whose power wanes with each dimensional shift. A cruel smile formed on its ever-changing features. They cannot help you this time, Amazon. Finally, its attention turned to Naruto. The catalyst. Different from the last cycle. More volatile, more interesting. The Nine Tails Jinchuriki, unexpected but perhaps more suitable than your predecessors. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Who are you? What do you want? I am Epic, the entity replied, spreading arms that momentarily resembled wings before shifting back to humanoid form. Observer of countless convergences, shepherd of dimensional evolution, you're the one corrupting the dimensional lattice, Diana stated, her hand moving to the lasso at her side. The entity depicted in the ancient temple. Epic inclined its head in acknowledgement. Corruption is such a limited perspective. I prefer to think of it as necessary adaptation. Realities stagnate when isolated. I bring them together. Force evolution through convergence. By destroying the barriers between dimensions, Hancock countered, causing chaos and suffering across worlds. A small price for cosmic advancement, Epic dismissed. The strong survive, adapted to the new multidimensional existence. The weak perish, as they should. As it spoke, Naruto noticed something disturbing, small tears in reality appearing around the chamber, leaking the same corrupting energy they'd observed in the Nexus Orb's vision. Whatever this epic was, its mere presence was damaging the dimensional integrity of their surroundings. Enough talk, Naruto declared, forming a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A dozen clones materialized, surrounding Epic in a defensive formation. Diana uncoiled her lasso, its golden length beginning to glow with divine energy, while Hancock assumed a battle stance, her expression cold with deadly intent. Epic observed their preparations with apparent amusement. How predictable. Always fighting. Never understanding. It raised a hand casually. But I didn't come here to battle, not yet. This is merely an introduction. With a flick of its wrist, a pulse of dimensional energy radiated outward, dispelling Naruto's clones instantly and knocking all three warriors back several steps. The attack carried no malice or killing intent, merely overwhelming power applied with precision. The convergence proceeds whether you resist or not, Epic continued. But your actions now determine whether your worlds survive the transition. Oppose me, and I'll have no choice. But to eliminate the anchor points entirely. Cooperate, and your realities may be preserved as distinct regions within the new merged existence. We've seen what your cooperation looks like, Diana responded, recovering her stance. Corrupted dimensions, twisted creatures serving your will. Necessary adjustments, Epic insisted. The dimensional barriers were never meant to be permanent, early training wheels for infant realities, to be removed when the time is right. And you decide when that time comes. Naruto challenged. What gives you that right? Epic's ever-shifting features settled momentarily into an expression of genuine surprise. Right, I am Epic, firstborn of the dimensional void. I existed before your realities formed, and I will remain when they return to cosmic dust. Its voice took on a harder edge. I don't require rights, merely the power I've always possessed. To demonstrate this power, Epic raised both hands, causing the very fabric of the room to warp and twist. Furniture began to float, gravity shifted, and for a terrifying moment, parts of the chamber seemed to phase into different realities entirely. This is but a fraction of what approaches, Epic warned. The full convergence will tear your worlds apart if not properly guided. I offer that guidance. The only alternative is oblivion. Hancock, who had maintained her composure throughout, finally spoke. If you possess such power, why appear before us at all? Why not simply force this convergence you desire? A shrewd question that caused Epic to focus fully on her. Because the Nexus requires the triad to unlock its full potential. Divine energy, natural energy, and catalyst energy, freely given, not taken. A cosmic failsafe your ancestors cleverly established. So you need our cooperation, Diana concluded. A hint of satisfaction in her tone. The ancient guardians ensured you couldn't simply force your way through. Epic's expression darkened. I need your energies. Your cooperation would simplify matters. But is not strictly necessary. It gestured casually, and all three felt a momentary draining sensation, as if something fundamental was being pulled from their very essence. There are alternatives to voluntary participation. Naruto felt the nine tails stir within him, reacting violently to this intrusion. The fox's chakra surged protectively, breaking Epic's hold on him. Beside him, Diana's divine aura flared with golden light, similarly rejecting the entity's attempt to drain her energy. Only Hancock showed visible strain, her face paling as Epic's power connected with her life force. Without hesitation, Naruto moved to her side, placing his hand on her shoulder and sharing the nine tails protective chakra. The orange energy flowed from him to her, creating a barrier that severed Epic's connection. Hancock gasped as she was released, looking at Naruto with genuine surprise, and something deeper she couldn't quite hide. Epic observed this interaction with evident interest. Fascinating. The catalyst protects the natural force, creating a stronger bond than anticipated. Its gaze shifted to Diana. While the divine stands apart, as always, we stand together, Diana corrected firmly, moving to flank Hancock's other side, as the Guardians have always done. For the first time, Epic's confidence seemed to waver slightly. Perhaps his cycle will be more challenging than I anticipated. No matter, the convergence has its own momentum now. We will meet again when the barriers thin further. With those ominous words, the entity stepped backward into the dimensional rift, which sealed itself with a final twist of distorted space, leaving the chamber intact but humming with residual energy. For several seconds, none of them spoke, processing what had just occurred. It was Hancock who finally broke the silence, her voice steadier than might have been expected after such an encounter. It seems we now know our enemy. One of them, at least, Diana amended. Epic may be powerful, but I doubt it's working alone. The dimensional entities we've encountered so far suggest a hierarchy, servants and lieutenants carrying out its will across multiple realities. Naruto's mind was racing, analyzing everything Epic had said. It mentioned convergence cycles and predecessors. This has happened before, with different people in our roles. And the previous Guardians found a way to defeat it, Diana added. They stabilized the convergence without allowing Epic to control the Nexus. Which is why parts of the temple records were destroyed, Hancock concluded. Epic doesn't want us to discover how they succeeded. A sudden commotion outside announced the arrival of the elite Kuja guards, responding to Hancock's earlier summons. Sandersonia burst in first, her serpentine form ready for battle. Sister, we felt the dimensional disturbance. She paused, seeing the three of them unharmed but tense. What happened? We've met our adversary, Hancock replied grimly. Gather the council immediately. All of Amazon Lily must prepare for what comes next. As Sandersonia departed to carry out these orders, Hancock turned to Naruto. Her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable for a brief moment. You protected me, she stated simply. Why? Naruto looked surprised by the question. Why wouldn't I? We're in this together. Something in his straightforward response seemed to affect Hancock deeply. She quickly composed herself, reverting to her regal bearing, but not before both Naruto and Diana noticed the flash of emotion in her eyes. We should join the council, she said, turning away perhaps too quickly. There is much to discuss. As they made their way through the palace corridors, Diana fell into step beside Naruto. Speaking quietly enough that only he could hear. The snake princess is not accustomed to being protected, she observed. Particularly by a man. I wasn't really thinking about that, Naruto admitted. It was just instinct. Diana smiled slightly. Sometimes instinct reveals more about our true nature than calculated actions. You act from the heart, Naruto Uzumaki, a rare quality in any world. Before he could respond to this unexpected praise, they arrived at the council chamber, where tension hung thick in the air. News of the dimensional disturbances had spread throughout the island, and representatives from various villages had gathered alongside the elders, seeking guidance and reassurance. The appearance of Hancock brought immediate focus to the proceedings. She took her place at the head of the council, her presence commanding despite the ordeal she'd just experienced. Amazon Lily faces an enemy unlike any in our history, she began without preamble. An entity CA-LLED Epic seeks to force the convergence of dimensions, with our island as one of 3 critical anchor points. She proceeded to describe their encounter, omitting only her moment of vulnerability and Naruto's intervention. As she spoke, Naruto noticed the varying reactions among the council members, some fearful, others determined, and a few openly skeptical. So we are to believe that our Sakura D Island is merely one fragment of a larger whole. One elder challenged, that we share origin with other dimensions. This contradicts our most fundamental histories. History is often simplified over generations. Diana responded diplomatically. The truth of your origins doesn't diminish Amazon Lily's significance, it enhances it. Your island was entrusted with guarding 1/3 of the most powerful nexus in existence. The debate continued, with factions forming among the council. Most supported Hancock's leadership and accepted the necessity of working with Diana and Naruto, but a vocal minority opposed any cooperation with outsiders, particularly a male. Our laws have protected us for centuries, argued an elder with elaborate facial tattoos. Allowing a man to remain on our island, to enter our sacred sites. Even the Snake Princess's private chambers, these violations invite disaster. Adherence to laws at the expense of survival is foolishness, not wisdom, Hancock countered sharply. If Amazon Lily is to survive this convergence, we must adapt. And trust the word of outsiders. The elder persisted. This man and this other Amazon. How do we know they don't work with this epic creature? Naruto had remained silent during the political debate, recognizing that his intervention might do more harm than good. But at this accusation, he couldn't stay quiet. If we wanted to help Epic, we wouldn't be warning you about the danger, he pointed out reasonably. We'd be keeping you in the dark until it was too late. The outsider makes a valid point, Elder Nyan supported. Moreover, both he and Princess Diana have helped defend our island against dimensional incursions. Their actions speak louder than our fears. The tattooed elder wasn't satisfied. Perhaps that is merely to gain our trust. The convergence may well be real, but their proposed solution, allowing a man to work alongside our warriors, sharing our sacred knowledge, conveniently undermines our most fundamental traditions. Tensions rose as more council members joined the debate. Through it all, Hancock remained composed, though Naruto noticed the slight tightening of her jaw as the criticism continued. Finally, Diana stepped forward, her presence somehow quieting the chamber without a word being spoken. I understand your concerns, She addressed the dissenting elders directly. Themyscira shares many of your traditions, including isolation from the world of men. But there are times when even the oldest traditions must be examined in light of new threats. She paused, making eye contact with several council members. Ask yourselves, would your ancestors want their descendants to perish for the sake of preserving laws, or would they want their people to survive and carry their legacy forward? Even if adaptation was required. The question hung in the air, resonating with many present. Even the tattooed elder seemed momentarily at a loss for a rebuttal. Elder Nyan seized the opportunity. I propose we continue as the council previously decided, working with our dimensional counterparts to address the convergence threat, while maintaining our sovereignty and core values. When the crisis has passed, we can reevaluate our approach. The compromise satisfied most of the council, though a few dissenters remained silent but clearly unconvinced. Hancock brought the meeting to a close with firm directives for island-wide preparations, strengthening defenses, establishing safe zones for civilians, and creating rapid response teams for dimensional incursions. As the council dispersed, Naruto found himself approached by Marigold, Hancock's massive serpentine sister. The Snake Princess requests your presence in the Eastern Gardens, she informed him, her tone carefully neutral. There are matters she wishes to discuss privately. Naruto glanced at Diana, who nodded encouragingly. I'll continue working with Elder Nyan on translating the texts we recovered from the temple, she assured him. We need to find concrete information about how the previous guardians stabilized the convergence. With that understanding, Naruto followed Marigold through the palace complex to a secluded garden hidden behind high walls. Unlike the more formal gardens he'd seen thus far, this one had a wild, almost untamed quality, lush vegetation growing in seemingly random patterns, with SMALL streams winding between flowering bushes and ancient trees. Hancock sat alone beside a small pond, her reflection rippling on the water's surface. She had changed from her battle attire into a simpler robe of deep blue silk, her hair flowing loose down her back. Without her imperial regalia, she looked younger, somehow more vulnerable. Marigold announced their arrival before discreetly withdrawing, leaving Naruto uncertain whether to approach or wait to be acknowledged. After a moment, Hancock spoke without turning. Do you find our island beautiful, Naruto Uzumaki? The unexpected question caught him off guard. Yes, he answered honestly. It's unlike anything in my world, wilder, more alive somehow. It is the only home I have ever truly known, she said softly. The only place I have ever felt safe. There was something in her tone that made Naruto approach cautiously, taking a seat on the stone bench beside her, though maintaining a respectful distance. The council members who oppose you, he began. They're afraid of change, aren't they? Not just me being here, but what the convergence might mean for Amazon Lily's future. Hancock glanced at him, surprised by his perception. Yes, fear often masquerades as tradition or principle. She returned her gaze to the pond. Though their concerns are not without merit, Amazon Lily's isolation has protected us from much suffering. But not all suffering, Naruto observed quietly. The statement hung in the air between them, loaded with unspoken understanding. Finally, Hancock turned to face him fully. You wonder about my hostility toward men, she stated rather than asked. Why I enforce laws keeping them from our shores. I figure you have your reasons, Naruto replied. Elder Nyan mentioned you had bad experiences. A bitter smile touched Hancock's perfect lips. A diplomatic way of describing slavery and torture. Naruto's eyes widened, but he remained silent, sensing she needed to speak without interruption. My sisters and I were not always rulers of Amazon Lily, Hancock continued, her voice taking on a distant quality. As children, we were captured by slave traders and sold to the celestial Drago. NS, the self-proclaimed world nobles, who consider themselves gods among men. Her hand unconsciously moved to her back, touching something beneath the silk robe. For years, we were their property, branded with the mark of their ownership. Forced to eat devil fruits for their amusement, treated as less than human. The bitterness in her voice was raw, unfiltered. We were eventually rescued and brought to Amazon Lily, where former slaves like ourselves had established a sanctuary. Here, I rose to leadership through strength and determination, and a vow that no Kuja would ever suffer as we had. Naruto absorbed this revelation in silence, understanding now the layers of trauma beneath Hancock's cold exterior. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "I'm sorry that happened to you. No one should ever be treated that way." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But you didn't let it break you. You turned it into strength, protecting others, leading your people. That takes incredible courage." Hancock looked at him with genuine surprise, clearly having expected a different response, perhaps pity or awkward discomfort. Instead, she found sincere respect in his eyes, an acknowledgement of her resilience rather than her victimhood. "Most men, upon hearing my history, either view me with pity or see only damaged goods," she admitted quietly. "You are unusual." Naruto smiled slightly. "Where I come from, a lot of people have painful pasts. My friend Gaara was used as a weapon from childhood. Sasuke lost his entire clan in a single night. I grew up hated by my village because of the 9 tails sealed inside me." He shrugged. "Pain either breaks you or forges you into something stronger. You got stronger." For perhaps the first time since his arrival, Hancock's smile contained no artifice or calculation, just genuine appreciation for being truly seen and understood. "You protected me today," she said after a moment. "When Epic attempted to drain my energy, you intervened without hesitation. Like I said before, we're in this together," Naruto replied simply. "That's what allies do." "Allies?" Hancock repeated, as if testing the word. "Is that what we are?" Something in her tone made Naruto look at her more closely. The proud, imperious snake princess was gone, replaced by a woman who seemed genuinely curious about his perception of their relationship. "I'd like us to be," he answered honestly, "more than just forced together by circumstance. I think we actually make a pretty good team." The faint color that rose to Hancock's cheeks was impossible to miss this time. She looked away quickly, flustered in a way that seemed completely at odds with her usual confident demeanor. "Your directness is disarming," she murmured. "Most on Amazon Lily would never speak to me so casually. Is that a bad thing?" Naruto asked, genuinely concerned he might have offended her. To his surprise, she laughed, a soft, melodious sound he hadn't heard from her before. "No, it is refreshing." Her eyes met his again, softer than he'd ever seen them. "Perhaps that is why the convergence brought you here, of all people." Before Naruto could respond, a sudden tremor shook the garden, stronger than any they'd felt previously. Across the island, they could hear shouts of alarm as the sky above darkened unnaturally, swirling with ominous energies. Hancock was on her feet instantly, her moment of vulnerability replaced by the warrior queen. The dimensional barriers are weakening again, more severely than before. Naruto stood beside her, already scanning for immediate threats. Epic said the convergence has its own momentum now. It's happening faster than even he anticipated. A Kuja warrior burst into the garden, breathing hard from exertion. "Snake Princess. Dimensional rifts are opening across the entire island simultaneously. Elder Nyan requests your immediate presence in the central plaza." Hancock nodded sharply. "We come." She turned to Naruto, her expression resolved. "Whatever happens next, know that I." She hesitated, seemingly struggling with unfamiliar emotions. "I am grateful for your presence on Amazon Lily, Naruto Uzumaki." Coming from the proud Snake Princess, this admission felt momentous. Naruto recognized the significance of what she'd shared, both her painful history and this acknowledgement of their developing bond. "Let's protect this island together," he replied, holding out his hand to her. After a moment's hesitation, Hancock placed her hand in his, a simple gesture that symbolized far more than mere alliance. Together, they hurried from the garden to face whatever new challenge the accelerating convergence had brought to their shores. Above Amazon Lily, the sky continued to darken as reality itself owned under increasing dimensional pressure. In the spaces between worlds, Epic observed with calculating patience, noting with particular interest the strengthening connections between the 3 guardians. "The pattern repeats," it murmured to itself, "yet evolves in unexpected ways. Perhaps this convergence cycle will prove more interesting than the last." Around it, the void between dimensions pulsed with anticipation, as if the very fabric of reality recognized that a critical moment in cosmic history approached, a point of no return for all connected worlds. Chapter 3 End.